Hold on to your butts.
Hang on, we're in for some chops.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Oh, somebody please think of the children!
Welcome to the DeEducated podcast.
What's up, DeEducated? Welcome to episode 13 of the DeEducated podcast. My name is Kris.
And I'm Mark, and you can't handle the truth. Did you know that Jack Nicholson only did 10 days of filming for that entire movie and was paid $5 million?
Apparently, it was quite a tense 5 days of filming, too.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was not the most professional
But
guy to work with.
for $5 million, man, I'll do whatever you need to do, and I'll be a grumpy asshole for those days. Like,
Well, yeah, but I don't think he was supposed to be a grumpy asshole. So they paid him $5 million for 10 days, and he was a grumpy asshole.
wow, that's even better. Like, that's a great deal. I would love to
I know,
get
right?
paid that amount of money.
I thought you were
Yeah,
going to make a point that like people just can't handle the truth, and that's why we have all this ridiculous lockdown bullcrap around the world.
Oh, well, we're gonna get into that anyway, and people should understand already that they can't handle the truth. Like, looking around, it seems that governments and organizations and corporations are just trying to hide the truth all the time.
Yeah,
People just simply can't handle it.
Can't take it. Well, you know what? Tell us the truth about what you did this week.
Yeah, I had a really good week. Obviously trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. Kind of ramped up some of our Muay Thai training. It was funny. We've got some new students, and we had this one student who was telling me about how good a shape he was in, and he's a soccer player, or as he called it, football, because I don't know, he's from some other country. And
He was from some non-American country.
So some non-North American country. And I was like, oh, okay, good to know, right? So I did a warm-up on Thursday, and then I was talking to him on Saturday, and he's like, I couldn't even walk. My legs are just jello. It was absolutely insane.
Wait a minute, he plays soccer and his legs were sore? Like, I can understand if he's like, I don't work my upper body very much. My shoulders were tired.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
But it was a warm up with a lot of bunny hops and exploding, a lot of calisthenic, like exploding squats and that sort of stuff. So it's lots of fun. And then my wife and I, our big goal this weekend was to try to be as normal as we possibly can be, as COVID lockdown measures continue to irritate everybody. So we on Friday went out to the Olive Garden, and went to and then we went to the Berry Barn today. And if people haven't now, obviously we have listeners who aren't in Saskatoon or who aren't in Saskatchewan, so this might not apply to you, but if you haven't had a chance to go to the Berry Barn, it's actually a really good time.
Just go on a nice day, and the view that it gives you of the South Saskatchewan River itself is nice. Oh
yeah, and just the time you're there. Now, of course, they've got a hell of a good racket there, right? Every time you turn around, it was $5 here, $5 there.
Oh yeah.
It was $2 for this, $1 for this, 50 cents, on and on and on. But you know what? It was a great time. We got to hang out as a family. It's in the fall, so the weather was just, you couldn't have asked for a nicer day. So, obviously, would have been a great day to be out. We got there about 10 o'clock. We had to leave here. So, or probably we left here for 10. Got there.
What time did you leave the Berry Barn, though?
Oh, what time did we leave the Berry Barn? It was probably around about 2:30 or so. Yeah.
Did you get rained on?
No.
Man.
It was I
was
nice
out at the range,
and
we got friggin' rained on starting at like 1:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, geez.
Just got ridiculous.
And it got cold out there too, or no?
Super cold. As soon as there was no sun, it was super cold.
Yeah, that's the absolute freaking worst. That's one thing with that area of the province when you get out to our range. As soon as there's no sun, that wind picks up and it turns so bloody cold out there.
Well, the problem is there's nothing around it, right? It's just all flat field, and then you've got these ranges with 25-foot side berms, and it just creates wind tunnels. But
Yeah.
Other than that, it
absolutely.
was nice. We
So-
actually did have to pack it up a little early,
Yeah.
which was unfortunate. But did you do anything else this week before I talk about that? Because that's what I'm going to talk about.
No.
Okay,
No. You go right ahead.
We did instructor training for Maple Seed today. We had a couple of guinea pig friends. Joanne actually came up with me, my wife, and we practiced essentially being instructors for Maple Seed. So that was a lot of fun. It was really good. Organized by one of the only full instructor in the province. So that was really nice, Ryan. And it went quite well up until no, it didn't go well at all. It was bad.
Oh.
They did well.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with my brain, but I had this personal family thing that happened like midweek and lasted up until yesterday. And it just threw me for my whole week for a loop.
Right.
And I don't know what is wrong with me, because I helped set this up. Like I went and talked to the Wildlife Federation range office and got us booked in for that particular range at that particular time on this particular day and all that sort of stuff. And just everything was going, I don't know I've never had it leave my brain that quickly before, but I just didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Didn't think about it Friday, didn't think about it Saturday when I got home, didn't think about it all day, like for the rest of the day on Saturday. And I woke up this morning, didn't even register in my brain. And I wasn't checking. I don't check my messages that often throughout the day, but I remember looking at my phone, there was a little Facebook Messenger chat head on the front of it, but when it's not unlocked, it doesn't show the actual message. And I was like, it's probably just somebody messaging me about work. I'll look at it later. Well, I looked at it at like just after 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And I was supposed to be there at 9 a.m.
Oh.
And it's almost a 45 minute drive out there.
Yeah.
So I messaged them. I'm like, oops, I'm coming out right away. And then I'm like, shit, Mark was supposed to come out with me. So I message you and you're like, I'm going to the berry barn. And I was like, crap. So I only know one other person in Saskatoon who's taken maple seed before. So I called Alicia and she must've been working or something, because she didn't answer her phone. So Joanne's like sitting on the couch doing her Sunday relaxation. And I'm like, there's no chance that you would, come and be a guinea pig and shoot a rifle on the line while we're practicing our line calling and instruction points, would you? And she's like, do I have to? And I was like, no, it's okay. And then, being the absolutely amazing wife that she is to this undeserving man, she said, okay, I'll go. So she got ready and I think she really had fun with it. That's the thing. She's always like, no, I don't really enjoy shooting. And then she's like, if you ask her if she'd enjoyed it, she's like, yeah, it was okay, but it wasn't that great. But every time she's out there, she seems to have fun. She seems to enjoy herself. So I don't know what her deal is. I think she's just playing coy.
She can't actually admit to you that she enjoys it.
No, because then I would expect her to come out more often.
Exactly.
And she, every single time I go out, she's the first to tell me, like, I'm just coming out this once. Don't ever expect me to come again.
Yeah.
I think she just doesn't want me to have the expectation of it. So she has to ration it out. But I think she enjoys it. And you know what? The first 10 shots that she fired, I think she got all 10 off. She didn't have any malfunctions on the first magazine. She was firing prone at a 1-inch square at 25 meters. So, to extrapolate that, that's like a 4-inch square at 100 meters, right? So it's just like, it's a square about this big. That's a circle, I understand, but it's about that big. But it's 25 meters away. And she got 9 out of 10 shots inside the square. Like better than any first-time shooter. Like it was her first time ever shooting prone with a sling. And that's better than anyone that I've ever seen first time shooting. So like, it's not even that she's a bad shot. She's a really good shot. And if she shot regularly and got training, she would be an amazing shot. Hands down, she would be a better shot than me. Like there's not even any question.
Right.
But no, she doesn't really enjoy it. Or so she says.
So she claims.
So anyway, I was late we started the thing almost 2 hours late, and they waited for me, which is very nice of them. I think they had to, because I was supposed to be practicing the role of line boss. So oops, that's my F up. But we got through about 3/4 of it, and then the rain just started dumping on us. So we packed it up and called it a little bit early, but we were almost all the way through. All we were doing were some qualification target calling. So we had got through all the points of instruction we wanted to get through. We got through all of the challenge targets we wanted to get through, because instead of shooting the whole thing, we were actually, when we were doing the actual shooting, we were just shooting monthly challenge targets that coincide with the point of instruction that we did.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So that was really fun. So I screwed the whole thing up, and then I got there and I'm like, I know all this stuff. I've done I've gone through every single point of instruction in an actual Maple Seed, almost all of them, if not all of them, more than once. Like I'm super comfortable doing this stuff now, but I couldn't think of a damn thing. I just lost my entire brain all day, and it was just a bag of crap, and I screwed the whole thing up. But you know what? The other 3 guys did fantastically.
Well, that's good, and of course, like with you just shitting the bed and being down here, they look that much better. So yeah, it's perfect for them. Yeah, so that's really, you did them a service.
It's possible. It's very possible that I did them a service. Yeah. No, I definitely did them a service.
Yeah, we'll go with it. You know what? They're not here to counter that. So
yeah, but Ryan has been saying that he's been listening to the show. So okay, if I say something bad about him, he might stop listening. So Ryan is the best.
Ryan's awesome.
Yeah.
Right on. Let's get on to the news. How does that sound?
Sure. So well, our first piece of news has to do with whatchamajigger. We're talking about guns. So I'm going to optimize this for a video clip, just because I'm going to like kind of play it in the background while I'm talking about it, but I'm not going to share my sound so that I can talk over it. I don't know why you guys need to know any of that, but essentially this is a message from Rod Giltaca, president of the CCFR, and the point here of this video, and you guys can watch yourself. You can see the URL up there. You can see it's on the CCFR channel. It's message from Rod, CCFR update, new info. You know what I'm realizing as we're doing this? I have not subscribed our DeEducated YouTube channel to the CCFR channel. So I'm going to do that live right now. Subscribed, notifications, all. You can do that on the CCFR channel, and you know what? You can do that on our channel also. And you know, you also do this little thing right here. Clicky like. Me likey feeds the algorithm, and it'll show this video to more people that have the same sort of interest that DeEducated has. And that's how this thing works. Anyway, this is an update. He's talking really quickly about everything that's going on, and he talks about the Integrity March. You just saw some footage of it there in the background. But the big deal is they have filed all of their papers for the injunction. They have not filed all of their papers for the lawsuit against the government. Not that I would have expected them to at this point, but they've filed like their affidavits and that sort of stuff for the injunction. And those who don't know, there's like kind of 2 things going on right now. One of them is like the long haul fight with the CCFR. The other one's kind of the short-term fight. And the short-term fight is getting an injunction against the order in council to have the effect of it removed, put on stay, while the lawsuit it goes through the process. And that, I think, is so big, because this lawsuit is going to take years. Almost guaranteed this is going to take longer than we have for the amnesty. And so if they get that injunction, it's just like it didn't even happen. And then they get to go through the rest of the court case. Now here's something, so I'm going to just pause this here. So this is just the injunction, okay? And in the injunction, they have asked the government to release or to give the CCFR access to the research documents that they relied on for justifying the order in council. Because as you remember, they said that like this is all evidence-based, you know, like we did our research and the research has proven that you know, this has to happen to keep Canadians safe. So the CCFR in their injunction are like, well, prove it, or give us an injunction.
Sure.
Like what documents did you rely on? Because we are looking and we can't find them. and we can't argue against your justification if you don't release your justification. So the government has come back and said, we need 2,920 days to comply with your request.
Wow.
That's 8 years.
Right. Yeah.
There's no friggin' way on earth that this party is even going to be in power in 8 years.
So how is it that they need 8 years to show the documents that they used to prove that they needed to do the order in council, but they didn't plan this for 8 years? It would have taken you even longer to look up all those documents. It's going to take you 8 years to comply with the request.
Mark, it only took them
right?
3 weeks to put it together.
Well, that's my point. So right there, that's all you got to say to the judge. The judge has to slap the injunction on. Has to.
Well, you've got to believe that they have to. Like, I can't possibly, like, we need 8 years to come up with the evidence. You know what they're asking for 8 years? Because they want 8 years worth of data, because I don't know if this is true. They can't be that naive as to think that after 8 years, they'll be able to show data saying, see, nobody's killed anybody with these guns.
Yeah.
Like, they can't be that naive.
Yeah. Well, I think some of these guns have already still been used in crimes, like some of the ones that came illegally across the border. So
well, yeah, but Mark, they're not though. That's the thing. Now, yes, there was one particular high profile seizure. That guy.
But they're all illegal. But they're all illegal. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're all illegal. They're all coming across the border legally, but they're not even the types of guns that were banned.
Yeah, that's fair.
Toronto is going through a record high number of shootings over the last 5-6 months.
Yeah.
And not a single one of them has occurred with any of the guns that were banned. Not one of them.
That's brutal.
And they're all being, and I'm not even talking about not with AR-15s, because nobody was shooting people with AR-15s before either.
Anyway, yeah, that's not.
They're not shooting them with any long guns.
Yeah, it's all handguns.
It's all handguns. And by the way, like I should put this together one of these times, because sometimes, like when a gun is found at the scene, you see a photo of it, all that sort of stuff. And I have yet to see a non-prohibited handgun in any of these photographs.
Right.
The most of the time, what I'm seeing are compact Glocks.
Right. Yeah.
Like one I saw a little while ago is like a Glock 26, like the compact. That's a prohibited firearm in Canada anyway. There's no way that came from Canada. It definitely came from the U.S. because it's not legal to be sold in Canada.
Yeah, no, this is this is the fundamental problem, right? Is there's just so much evidence against them. So I think it was just a Hail Mary in the middle of a pandemic. They tried to pull the wool over Canadians' eyes, and it's good that we've got organizations like the CCFR who are actually, going to try and stand up for our rights. It's pretty pathetic, actually.
I got to be honest with you. I think that's the major difference this time compared to the last time that there was a major gun grab law made, if you want to put it that way. When Chrétien's government put in the long gun registry, not only the scale of firearm advocacy was lower, the type of firearm advocacy was much different, much different.
Less sophisticated.
Much less sophisticated. We have some gun organizations in this country, and I don't care. I'm just going to say it. We have some gun organizations, and by the way, guys, I'm not affiliated with the CCFR. Like, you need to know that. Like, I'm not paid by them. I'm not a what do you call it? Field officer for them. I'm not a spokesman for them. I'm not involved with the CCFR, other than I have given them my money to help fight this, and I've given them my money for a basic membership and insurance in the past. That's as far as it goes.
I have a lanyard from them.
Yay. and for the record, the reason that I have a membership with the CCFR is because I researched the gun organizations before I joined anyone. And these were the guys that I wanted to join. Now, I'll also say I have a membership to the CSSA as well. And I don't think that the CSSA is maybe doing things a little bit differently, but I'm not going to say the CSSA is useless. I don't think that they are, and they're not necessarily the gun organization that I'm talking about. I'm going to come straight out and say it. I don't care if it loses us a couple of gun people that are watching us. I couldn't care less. The NFA, my opinion, does more harm for gun owners in this country than they do good. Their style of gun advocacy has no, like, it's like when Chuck Heston was the president of the NRA, they saw what Chuck Heston was doing and they're like, that's a great idea. And they started advocating in Canada just the same way that Chuck Heston was advocating in the United States, as though the same type of advocacy would even get traction in this country. Like, they just made the mistake of thinking that we're the same. We're not. Okay.
Yeah. And we don't, and not only are we not the same, but like the people aren't the same. Like the type of people who own guns in this country are different than they
completely
are in
different.
the United States.
And we always have been since the dawn of Canada. Firearms ownership in Canada has looked different than firearms ownership in the United States, and enforcement with firearms has looked different. The RCMP has instituted no firearm allowed, like no carry in towns and cities, especially in the West, in the 19th century. When the gold rush was happening in 1896, and 1896, 1897, 1898 were like the 98, I think, was the big year. But like the end of the 19th century, you could not carry a firearm around Dawson City as soon as the RCMP had a presence in 98. Like this is nothing new. Like, why anybody would think that American style advocacy would fly with Canadian people or the Canadian government is beyond me, but that's what they chose to do. And I don't think it was particularly effective. They like to pretend that they got a lot of stuff done. I don't really think that they did. I see things like the CSSA doing great advocacy in things like environmental protection, because, for a long time, environmentalists have been trying to ban lead ammunition because of contamination. And the CSSA has done really good work on proving that literally within a couple of days after a round is fired into a berm, or even a round, let's say it misses an animal and lands in a field somewhere, a couple of days later, it gets encoded in rust and it doesn't leach any lead into the soil anyway. And so, I mean, we're on the right side there too, but the CSSA has done good advocacy towards that. I don't know what sort of good advocacy the NRA's done. They never talk about it. And I think it makes me believe that they don't actually do a whole hell of a lot, other than, they'll meet with politicians and talk to them, but really, what are they accomplishing? You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah.
In the meantime, even the NRA has moved on from the Chuck Heston era.
That's right.
But in Canada, the NFA still thinks that they're going to get somewhere by putting no compromise and making these stupid, sometimes funny, but still just stupid cartoons and memes on their social media pages. Anyway, like I'm also not happy with the NFA with this whole lawsuit that they've put against the CCFR, and how they actively work against the CCFR. And I think that they're just, anyway, I not happy with them. I really went on a tangent there. I really didn't need to.
It's all good.
No, I guess I needed to say it out loud once. I was talking about the CCFR though. I was just trying to let people know that I don't work for them or represent them in any way, other than the fact that I think that they're the best organization in Canada. So going back to what Giltaka's video with the injunction, and quite frankly, I can't even remember the point I wanted to make about the CCFR. I shouldn't have started talking about the NFA, but I think that, they've got my money, and as long as this drags out, they'll get more of my money. And what I was going to talk about is the injunction. I think that if they are successful in getting this injunction, it will be one of the biggest wins in Canadian history.
For sure.
And now I also just remembered that I was actually talking about when the Chrétien era and their gun ban, we had a much less sophisticated advocacy for firearms in this country. not only do we have more sophisticated advocacy for firearms now, we have much better organized advocacy for firearms. And it's true that the lawsuit that the CCFR has against the federal government right now, and they've got other people joining them. It's not just them, and that's fantastic. And there are some other rather independent lawsuits which are also fantastic because they touch on different things apparently, and they're kind of ancillary, and it's all great stuff. But I don't know if anybody can argue that the CCFR's lawsuit is not the tip of the spear.
And, yeah, exactly.
And the fact that they're seeking an injunction while it gets sorted out in court, I just have to respect the fact that they're even trying it.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Anyway, talk about that a little longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on. So this one I'm going to have to share audio on because you have to hear it.
I love it.
So basically, this is Chrystia Freeland. She is the deputy of everything now. She's the deputy prime minister, minister of everything. She's the deputy prime minister. She's the minister of finance. Is she the minister of anything else currently?
Not that I'm aware of, but I know that she actually just had did have another portfolio that I think she gave up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she's basically she's Trudeau's biggest yes person. You see what I did there? Anyway, she's talking on the news and she's talking about COVID-19, and she accidentally told everybody to wear masks so that they don't have to do more terrible things to us. So just have a listen.
Okay, really great to talk to you, Lisa. And please, everyone, let's flatten the curve together, limit our social interactions. Please let us all wear our masks. If we do it right, we can avoid having to do much more terrible things. And we can let our kids keep going to school.
We can avoid having to do much more terrible things. And I know that's not what she was talking about. Like, she wasn't saying like, we will do terrible things to you, but it's funny.
Well, and it is funny. And of course we don't, everybody understands. Yes. It's a little bit of a Freudian slip, but they're doing some pretty terrible stuff, and they know, sure, that of the impact. I do want to comment on Lisa Laflamme though. Like, Isn't she 10 million years old? And she just looks great. I'm just saying. So,
she looks younger than Chrystia Freeland.
Right? Like, God, I don't know if she's like maybe allegedly drinking the blood of virgins or something. I don't know, but
I think what it is she's what the hell's his name from the Rolling Stones? I know his name. I mean, what's going on here?
Steven Tyler. No,
Steven Tyler is Aerosmith.
Smith.
I can't believe I'm having to look up guitarist Rolling Stones. Keith Richards. Oh my God.
There's somebody in their car screaming at us right now. It's Keith Richards, you dummies. You dummies.
So anyway, I think what she's doing is she's just she's drinking the blood of Keith Richards.
That's fair.
He found the Fountain of Youth sometime in the 1990s and just hoarded it all for himself. And it
has to be, right?
Yeah, he turned it all into bong water or something, and now everybody just has to drink his blood to stay alive.
I have to look this up. Lisa Laflamme is how old?
I'll look up Chrystia Freeland.
No, but I guess she's born in 64.
Well, that's not that bad.
That's not that bad.
Well, she's only 4 years older than Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland was born in 68.
That's fair. Jeez, yeah. Still, I guess, it's
how bad is this that we're talking about news reporters and politicians' ages?
I know, but it's funny because it's one of these things that happens. I find as you get older, right? Is like you'll look at somebody, you're like, man, that person's been on the air for your whole as far back as I can remember. Like, they've got to be a million years old.
If she's only 56 years old, she must have been on the air since she was in her 20s, man.
It has to have been, right? But that also goes to show you we're getting old.
Yeah,
that's the problem,
that's,
right?
That's probably true.
That our age is catching up. So speaking of
speaking of irritations,
you want to bring up this one here?
Just give me a moment. So apparently COVID-19 cases continue to surge in Ontario and Quebec. So So we were talking about this offline, and maybe we'll talk about it a little really quickly here. So, first of all, like I just love the CBC. So here you can see it yourself, folks. Okay, here's the title: COVID-19 cases continue to surge. Okay, and the subtitle is even coronavirus: what's happening in Canada and around the world. The first half of this article, starting here, this is where the article starts, and all the way to here, is about CERB,
So nothing.
the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. So it's not even about COVID-19 cases. Anyway, I love you, CBC. Go to hell. Defund. So the point here is, there we go. 896 new cases on Sunday, up from 698 cases in Quebec. And then I think there were 500 cases on the same day in Ontario. So,
and how many deaths?
None. There were none.
There you go.
So in Dorval, Montreal's West End, a long-term care home that was hit hard by the first wave of the pandemic with 38 dead in less than a month has put residents in isolation after a staff member tested positive. Okay, so that's an outbreak. That's unfortunate. Like an outbreak in a care home is super unfortunate.
Absolutely.
And you can absolutely expect a high number of deaths when an outbreak happens in a care home. But I still think that this is one of not only Canada, actually, I can't even say the world's. I think this is one of Canada's greatest failures during COVID-19.
I think Canada, and the world, like this is the issue.
But a lot of other places in the world has really smartened up and locked down on care homes.
Yeah, well, I know we haven't done a very good job of it, and
we haven't done anything. Let's be honest.
And hell, in the United States, Como literally was taking COVID patients and sending them back to old folks' homes. But like this has been my whole issue from day one. Why are we not locking these folks down? Like
instead of us,
we need to protect these people.
Yeah,
you can't.
Well, we said that on like one of our first episodes,
right? This is
we were saying reversed. That like at no other time in history have we quarantined, locked down, shut down the healthy population. You need to keep the vulnerable population safe and allow the rest of the population to go on and live their lives.
That's right. And
here we're not like we're almost doing it the opposite way because we don't have proper protection in place for care home facilities for the elderly and for the at risk, for immunocompromised. We don't have protocols for any of them.
Right.
But we're severely restricting. We've destroyed our economy and everything else from everybody who's healthy.
Well, and this is just it, is like we could have, especially in early days, people were so united to help one another and to look out for one another and to take care of one another. If they had come out to us and said, hey, we need to take care of the truly vulnerable people. We're gonna not only lock down these homes. We need to make sure that people are taking care of their elderly, or taking them home, or quarantining them. We're gonna assist folks in being able to take time off of work to take care of their elderly parents.
Yes,
because we need to get them out of old folks' homes. You would have had an upswell of support for that beyond anything. But what happened is they went in reverse. They decided to lock everybody down and didn't actually put in any protocols to help the elderly. They didn't put in any extra funding to help the elderly. And now here we sit. These poor people are the ones that are paying the price for this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And even that article had that there was 18 new hospitalizations, but they had 12 since April. So like, most of this stuff, again, is happening to the people who are the most vulnerable, and we're not taking care of them, but we're crashing our economy, which is going to impact them even more than COVID ever did.
It's just so completely ass backwards. Like you can't even figure the logic. Like I would love for somebody, and you know what, if somebody's listening to this and you understand the logic behind this, please comment and explain it to me, because I've actually given a lot of thought to this.
Yeah.
And other than turning a minority government into an authoritarian, almost totalitarian government, I cannot find a logical reason for doing it the way that we've done it. Agreed. And you may remember, Mark, I've been saying this since late March. When we had the 2-week shutdown, I was like, okay, 2 weeks, shut it down. fine. But maybe a week into the shutdown, I was like, this was my plan for reopening. After 2 weeks, everything goes back to normal. We take this 2 weeks to get the vulnerable cared for, to get protocols in place and staff and manpower in place and resources in place to properly quarantine and lock down vulnerable populations while still supporting them so that they aren't just locked and welded into their homes like they did in China.
That's right.
Okay. Like actually take care of people. For everybody else, it was reopen.
Yeah.
And I've been saying this since friggin' March. Reopen. Go about your life. If you get sick, stay home. And I remember even saying, if you got sick, you should be able to qualify for 2 weeks worth of EI.
Yeah,
whether you qualify for EI or not.
That's right.
Now, the EI program has already been in place for how long? How friggin' easy would it have been to just ease restrictions on EI?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There's a short-term disability program that's already built into EI. They could have literally retooled it. That. Yeah, you could have literally retooled it.
Do you even need to retool that?
Boom. And done. Well, you would have to increase capacity. That would have been basically it.
Sure. Right? Yeah, you had to have more staff working on applications.
But again, we would have spent far less money. We would have had far less economic impact.
We would have spent a fraction of the money.
A fraction of the money. And what we're going to get into the budgets and all this stuff and some of this stuff with Dr. Jason Zorba here shortly. But this is the thing is we've spent a lot of money on COVID-19.
You probably remember me saying at the end of April when the numbers came out that between March and April, $22 billion per month was being spent on sorry, that was May. $22 billion per month was being spent on CERB. And I said, can you imagine if we had taken $22 billion a month or even half of that? Just take $11 billion a month. And spread that out in resources, and even if you do it a little bit recklessly, you know what I mean. You're spending half the amount, even if the corruption level is a little bit higher. You're still spending half the amount of just the CERB program alone. And how much good could that have done in supporting vulnerable populations from getting isolation that they needed and allowing the rest of the world to keep going? And that's just the CERB program. Yeah. There would have been no We Charity scandal. There would have been no emergency rent relief. There would have been no emergency loan program. There would have been no we're talking about
airline bailouts, cruise line bailouts.
We're talking about half the amount of money that we spent on the CERB program alone per month.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
Absolutely nuts. And by the way, calling what is happening a surge.
Yeah,
let's be real. I mean,
come on.
We were talking about Florida's numbers. So if Florida, obviously a much smaller, much more dense geographically, but Florida has a slightly smaller population than Ontario and Quebec combined, like a couple of million less, not too much less. But when you look at the totals in Ontario and Quebec versus Florida, which everybody in the East especially, but really everybody in Canada loves to thumb their nose at the United States, and especially at Florida, that cesspool of illness and disgustingness and capitalism and everything else.
Hillbillies and
everybody's dying in Florida, and Trump is killing them.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, just based on confirmed infections versus deaths, they have a death rate of, what would we say it was? It was like 2.6%?
Yeah, about 2.6 to 3%, yeah.
Yeah. Ontario and Quebec combined have a death rate of 6%.
So who's doing worse?
So who's doing worse? Exactly. And you know what?
Florida has all the old people. Florida has all the old people.
That's right. Not only do they have all the old people, but they're not shut down. They were one of the first states to reopen. In fact, they just announced that they're done putting restrictions on a whole segment of industries, including bars and restaurants and everything else.
You
Like
you
that
might
just happened
almost
in the last couple of days.
Yeah, you might almost say that because you got Sweden and Florida and the Denmark and some of these places that are removed, and South Korea as well removed their restrictions.
Yep.
In early days they did. You might almost say that the places that removed the restrictions and just let it fly seem to be doing quite well.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Also, nobody ever talks about Georgia. I'm going to look this up. I'll share my screen just because I'm really interested in this. Because what's really important to note here, why I care about Georgia. Georgia never really shut anything down.
Right.
For example, fitness facilities in our province in Saskatchewan, we were the first industry to be completely locked down, told to lock
That's
our
right,
doors,
yeah.
go home. Okay. Fitness industries like jiu-jitsu schools specifically, like how I know is through jiu-jitsu schools, they weren't shut down, period.
That's right.
At all in the state of Georgia. So let's look at Georgia COVID stats. So they've had 300,000 cases, 6,000 deaths. That's actually pretty similar to Canada.
Yeah.
That's pretty similar to all of Canada. Now, what is the population? So obviously they have a lot less people than Canada. So their infection rate is higher, but their percentage of infections and deaths is not higher.
Right. Yeah.
Well, what is that percentage wise? I don't even know. Do you know?
6 million, or 6.7 out of 10 million. You're looking at 6.7% from 10 million.
Well, here I'll
That's
just
total
crunch.
people.
I'll just crunch the numbers really quick. So 6, 7, 8, 9, and 298,000. That's only 2.27% death rate.
Right.
Ontario and Quebec have a 6% death rate. Doesn't all of Canada have a 6 that high right now?
Yeah, I think we're about 6% right now. Our numbers are in Canada. Actually, just had
148,000 cases and 9. So our death rate percentage is way higher than Georgia, and they didn't lock anything down.
Right.
9242, 148,000. That's a 6.2% death rate Canada-wide.
Right.
And we've had all the lockdowns and flatten the curve, folks.
Yeah.
And apparently we flattened that curve like a motherfucker.
Right. Well, this is my whole thing with the whole damn thing, right? Is that, okay, so people are talking about these surges and cases and this and that, but the death rates have not really gone up. They haven't gone down, but they haven't gone up.
Well, actually, as cases surge,
so it's cases.
Death rate percentage is going down.
Yeah, so this is
not going in lockstep.
That's right. People are not dying from this anymore or as much, and we know this because the medical people started figuring out how to treat it. For example, early days when they're like, we need ventilators. Guess what they found out? Ventilators. That's what was killing people.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I would say that, like, I'm sure that has an effect, but I think that the biggest effect as why the death rate percentages are going down, especially in the United States, is that the infection rates are spiking in younger demographics.
Yeah, for sure.
And the reality is that this is not a super deadly disease if you're under the age of 65.
Yeah, exactly.
And a major portion of these new infections are happening under the age of 30. Mm-hmm. And they get sick for 2 weeks and they're fine. And let's be honest, they don't even get sick for 2 weeks. That's an arbitrary window that we chose because we figure that you can be infectious for 2 weeks. Most people are sick for 5 days like the regular flu, and they're fine. They're done. They're going back to their regular life. Well, they're not because they're not allowed, but they could go back to their regular lives.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we're in this crazy world right now, and I'm hoping that cooler heads will eventually prevail here.
I really hope so, but unfortunately, I got to be honest, man. I'm losing faith. I think that people who take the time to think, and it's not just that. Thinking is a skill.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
We talked about this very early on. This was a big theme in DeEducated, and I still believe it very, very much. Intelligence is made of a couple of things, right? So intelligence is made of knowledge. Knowledge is just information.
Yeah.
Okay. So gathering information, and wisdom. Wisdom is required to apply that information, and that's what creates intelligence.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And going to school makes you educated. That is the gathering of knowledge. Education is the gathering of knowledge.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the teaching of wisdom as well, but that doesn't happen in school anymore, neither at
That's
the
long
post-secondary
gone.
or the primary level.
No.
And so I don't think that most people nowadays have developed the skill of wisdom to the point where they can apply their knowledge. And by the way, wisdom is also required to be able to determine whether knowledge is factual or not factual.
Well, and I was just going to say, this is the real sad reality that we're facing now is people are so convinced of their own intellectual superiority, but are lacking such wisdom, that you're seeing posts of like, look at these idiots who don't wear their masks.
Yes.
What kind of idiot doesn't wear a mask?
Yeah, look how stupid these people are. They must be dumb.
And yet these people have clearly not taken the few minutes that it takes to just Google, like we just did, to look up some of these stats. One of the best things I've heard, and that's the thing,
when people do Google, they look up other people's opinions.
Yeah.
They don't look up information.
The actual facts.
Yeah, they just look up other people's, and usually people of the same ideology as them.
That's right. And one of my favorite things, and this is how I've been saying this to people from now on, because it seems to really resonate more, rather than saying that, there's a 3% death rate of COVID. I say there's a 97% survival rate.
Yeah.
That changes the narrative, right? It changes the reality of it. So
absolutely.
All right.
It's funny. It's the same thing with guns, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of guns, let's move on to our wild weekly video of the week.
So we've been really cynical with all of our news articles so far. This I think is absolutely hilarious. Yeah. I really got to say that I really think that the best comedy is always comedy that makes fun of both sides simultaneously.
100% agree.
And this does that perfectly. And I don't know for certain. I recognize this guy. This guy's an actor. I'm pretty sure that I've seen this guy on television.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah. I'm very, very sure that I've seen this guy on I'm actually just about 100% sure. I got to look him up at the Laser Boy, but he really, really looks like somebody who played a serial killer on an episode of Bones once, I think. But anyway, doesn't matter. Listen to what he says.
I got a message for all you liberals out there. You want my gun, my firearm? Come take it from me. Just walk through my door, come into my home, and take it from me. With your weak, soft, liberal, girlish hands. Just try to put those hands on me. Those soft, liberal hands. Put them on me, on my body. Just slowly, gently dragging your fingers up and down my arm, giving me goosebumps. You want my gun? Come kiss me for it. But not like right away. Don't be too obvious with it. Let's do that thing where our faces get close to each other. And you know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. You just stare at each other's lips. But you're waiting for the right signal to give yourself over to them completely. Like in A Walk to Remember. Come do that for my gun. Bite my lip and play with my hair. For my firearm. If you want my gun, come spank me for it. Not like too hard, but like still hard,
Still hard.
Like hurt me, but make me feel safe at the same time. You pussy liberals.
Hurt me, but make me feel safe at the same time.
Safe at the same time. But how friggin' perfect is that? I love that video. I love it. You got to lampoon, and if you can't this has actually been my argument with the left recently has been they have lost their sense of humor.
Absolutely.
They have no humor.
They never had one to begin with. Let's be honest.
Well, yeah, I agree, but I would say that it's really been the death of being able to lampoon oneself and look
Yep.
at oneself critically. And the best way to look at oneself self critically is through humor. It's awesome. But yeah, so everybody's gotta check out that video. But I think it's time to talk to Mr. Jason.
Yeah, time for the main topic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Dr. Jason Zorba once again. What's up, Jason?
How much? What's up with you
Dr.
guys?
Jason.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Zorba. Once again, we're glad to have you to de-educate us on the throne speech. So
Yeah, so let's talk about, first of all, what led to the throne speech, what is the throne speech, and what are the ramifications of a throne speech in generalities, I guess.
All right. So the short answer to all this is that a few weeks ago, Trudeau decided to prorogue Parliament, which essentially stops Parliament from it closes the door. And in our system, the doors, as it's odd for a lot of people, they don't realize that our system works the way that it does, insofar as you can't telecommute in. You physically have to be in the building. And so what Trudeau essentially did was close the doors, which meant that nobody could be in the building. And when I say the building, I mean the House of Commons, Parliament buildings. So nobody could be in the building, and because nobody could be in the building, nothing could happen. And when that happens, when you prorogue Parliament, when you shut the doors and stop Parliament, everything that was happening up until that moment stops. There were 3 different investigations going on into his conduct, into the conduct of the government. All of them stopped.
Yep.
So all of that gets paused and stopped. Not paused, sorry. Pause implies it gets restarted. You can restart afterwards, but it's not automatic. Everything has ended. When you do reopen the doors, when Parliament begins again, the government needs to give a throne speech, which outlines its priorities. Basically, it's like hey guys, this is what we want to do for this session of Parliament. And that's what just happened. It means nothing insofar as there's no laws or anything being passed. It's just, hey guys, this is what we think. However, and this is the really important part, it has to pass. They vote on it in the House of Commons. Right. So if it doesn't pass, then the government falls, and in all likelihood, we have an election.
And luckily for Justin Trudeau, the NDP is currently being run by a spineless twerp.
Well, I would say certainly Singh is really interesting insofar. If I can, quickly go off on.
Please, I was planning on talking about him at some point anyway. We might as well get it out because the latest news is that it looks like he's going to prop up the throne speech. He's going to allow it to pass.
I think he announced that they are for sure.
That's what I heard. Is that he's going to be.
They came to a deal. Yeah.
Yeah, they came to a deal. They're going to include paid sick leave, and they increase the not the CERB. What do they call it now? The new acronym. CERB replacement. Yeah. Whatever.
It's just CRB now. They took the word emergency out of it, so it's not CERB. It's CRB. It's still CERB, but it's not CERB. It's CERB.
Well, they increased that. So when it comes to Jasmeet Singh, one of the interesting things about this is he is, when it comes to certain aspects of being a good political leader in this country, he's terrible. But to other aspects, he's really, really good. So he's terrible when it comes to actually winning elections in terms of if your goal is to get as many people elected as possible and to organize your party in such a way as to position it as to have the best opportunity to win, he's terrible. And if your goal is to inspire the people who work for you, to make sure you get the right people in the right places, he's terrible. The way he's handled the party, the way he's handled the fundraising, the way he's organized the party
he's a great fundraiser, obviously.
Well, he's really bad at that part of it, right? It's and no one should be surprised at it. He didn't have a lot of experience doing this. This is a big leap, and so he's just not done a good job on those aspects of being a leader. However, and you have to give him his due, he has played the minority, the minority government game exceptionally well. If your goal as a leader, so this is the good side, if the goal as a leader is to advance your party's priorities, if your goal as a leader is to be seen, to be able to articulate your party's priorities to the people, he does that really well. He's a great campaigner, and he's getting NDP priorities passed through the government because the government needs his votes. The Liberals need his votes, and he knows it. Sorry, I was just gonna say
he's good at playing the game. He understands politics. He doesn't understand elections. Basically, is how he's always.
But here's the thing: are they really? Yeah, he got what he wanted, but look at what he wanted. So this is the second time that he's allowed the Liberals to. It was him that allowed the proroguing to really occur in the first place, right? And now he's going to be propping up the throne speech and allowing that to go through. But what is he really getting in return for that? I mean, he's getting an extension of the CRB program. Is that really going to win him a lot of political points? You know what I mean? And paid sick leave.
But remember that's why there's two different parts of it where he's good and he's bad, right?
Yeah.
None of this is positioning him to be a government in waiting. None of this is actually going to really benefit the NDP down the road.
But it's even going to get more of his MPs elected.
No. In fact, they're probably going to lose a few people here and there. But
so what's the point?
In terms of, he's advancing NDP values.
Right, exactly. Like the NDP and Liberals, the NDP and the Liberals have a very similar ideology. So where they can meet up with one another, or if he can even advance, 5%, 10% of his own agenda on top of the variation between Liberal and NDP, for his party, that
I completely understand that.
That'll be a win.
I totally understand that, but to what end? Like, if you have no point to furthering your values, then
he'll be able to say,
crap?
Because he's the leader of the party, he'll be able to sit there and say, "Look what I did. These are our values, and this is what I was able to accomplish."
That's my question. Does anybody
for him.
It's not. That's my question.
Internally,
when he goes and says that internally, is that really going to give him the political clout that he needs to continue running the party, or to even get the party anywhere?
Oh, absolutely. I think here's my take on the NDP. The NDP has been taken over by ideologues, activists, and academics.
Yep.
They used to be a much more practical party, right?
Yeah.
The party used to be a party where there's a lot of union guys, a lot of union men and women who'd cut their teeth making deals, et cetera, et cetera. You had a lot of practical politicians, guys who were like, okay, so this is how we win, da 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 da.
That all really seems to have died with Jack Layton, hey?
Well, in a lot of ways, and we see the same thing here in Saskatchewan. The NDP is in the same way has essentially been has morphed from this party that was a
working
man's third party. Well, working farmers, but also articulated a different specific vision, and now it is very much academics, ideologues, and activists. And I don't mean this to disparage it, but those groups of people who tend to dominate the party aren't concerned with the long-term politics of it, right? They're not concerned with positioning themselves to win, which is why they dumped Mulcair and embraced the LEAP manifesto back in, was it 2015 or even a little bit earlier? No,
I thought they dumped Mulcair before that.
Yes, of course. Sorry, 2013, 14. But either way, that whole process, right? So there's a war inside the NDP. The Rachel Notleys on the one side, the older, more practical, pragmatic, versus the Jasmeet Singhs on the other side, who are more ideological. And for the ideologues, remember, the ideologues are going, we win because we stay true to our values.
Oh my God.
That's the political game, though.
Yeah.
Like that's just it. Is that there's different levels of power that you're trying to hold on to, right? So a lot of times people think political power is becoming the prime minister, but there's political power is on a spectrum, right? And especially when it comes to party politics, you've got to make sure that you've got your leadership on lock, that the little groups that are within your party, that you've got power in there. So there's always power plays going on throughout the entire thing. But anyway, sorry.
Sure. Can we, before we move on from Jagmeet
Yeah.
Singh and the NDP, can we all just acknowledge, just for a quick moment, the absolute, I can't even find the right word that isn't going to cause me to swear, but the absolute reality of the number of people who are okay with, this is a win for us because I got my way. Because
I mean,
really,
how
that's
else
what
would
we're
you
talking
define a
about.
win? Yeah.
What's that?
So how else would, like, you're saying it in a pejorative sense, but for most people saying I got my way, that would be the very definition of a win.
Well, no, you're right. So maybe I got my way with, but the difference being that there's no thought given to why that's even your way. Like, how is this actually a win? Well, it's a win. It's a win for me because I got my way. But why do I want that? What is the purpose? What is going to come from this win other than making me feel good because I got my way?
Well, they're advancing the country close each step that they advance the country to the left in terms of more expansive social security, etc., is a win for them, right? So they look at that's their viewpoint.
I just have a lot of trouble seeing that sort of. It seems like a very warped point of view to me, and I just have difficulty.
But when you're not
right,
but when you're not an ideologue.
Well, I suppose,
right?
yeah.
And I would be bereft if I didn't say this too. It sounds like we're trashing lefties and progressives, etc. But we're not. Insofar we're talking about ideologues. The right has its own share of ideologues.
100%.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
No, you're absolutely right about that.
And the right, the success of the Conservative Party and the Sask Party, if I could use two right-wing leaning parties, has come because they have successfully gagged and quieted the ideologues on their side, right? They're not letting them talk. They don't control the party anymore. When they control the parties, that's when you see the right-wing parties go down the same way the NDP goes down, right? It's Aaron isn't an ideologue. That's
you're
why.
right. So, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that when I said that, I guess I just can't identify with that. What I can't identify with is trying to push any sort of or support any sort of mandate without understanding the big picture, the logic behind it. So you're right, exactly what we're talking about. I just don't identify with blind ideology, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the impromptu,
Right. Back to the throne speech. So,
yes.
So proroguing Parliament, so the throne speech had to happen. It can be voted down, and it's not going to be now. Jagmeet Singh and the Liberal and the NDP will support the Liberals, which means that it basically means the government survives, but that's it. It doesn't mean anything else, right? The next thing that has to happen is they're going to table a budget. Now that's also a confidence motion. So the budget also has to pass. And the budget doesn't even have to be, ideally, your budget's going to be related to your throne speech, but it doesn't have to be. There's still going to be wheeling and dealing, and we're going to see what's going to happen with the budget. And that's the next big thing. So, because remember, the throne speech he doesn't commit him to do anything beyond things he publicly said he's going to do. This doesn't mean he has to do it. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to see the budget, and we're going to find out. Now, I suspect the budget's going to echo the throne speech.
I don't want to bring us back to Jagmeet Singh again, but I have to, because when you're talking about the budget, do you think so? Jagmeet was all over the news because he loves being on the news. You said that's the one thing that he actually does well, and he was talking about everything in the throne speech is all just promises that we've heard before, and talking about how Justin Trudeau and the Liberal, the current government, is great at making promises and talking and saying that they're going to do things, but then they never do them. And he was pointing out all the things from the throne speech that have been promised in the past and has now just been re-promised, or maybe one up promised. But over the last 5 years, they never took any steps towards actually meeting those promises previously. And so he's, the paraphrase from him is really, I'm tired of taking his word for things. I need to see action. Well, then the next day they give him some more words and he's like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll support you. When the budget comes around, that's a little bit less words. I mean, really, it is still just words. It's just a budget, but it's at least a little bit more concrete than rainbow kisses and promises from the throne. Do you think that he may change his tune depending on how the budget comes out, or do you think he's picked up their pail of water and he's just going to continue carrying it?
Well, I mean, from all the things that we're reading, all the things that are coming out, this is going to be a liberal budget that is going to just splash cash. I mean, they're going to be Scrooge McDuck jumping in the vaults and, swimming through the dollar bills, and it's all borrowed money, right? Yeah. And so that's essentially what the NDP wants.
That is the socialist ideology, isn't it?
So, I mean, the odds of them voting, you have to think of it from the NDP point of view, right? If they vote against this budget and the government falls, and then there's an election and there's a conservative government that wins, they're not going to get any of this stuff.
You're right.
Right.
In any election.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Sure.
Sorry. In any election that the NDP has to face right now is just more likelihood of them losing more seats. They're going to do everything they can to prevent an election.
Especially because they probably wouldn't even be able to run a full slate of candidates because they don't have the funds.
Right.
Even if they do run a full slate, if they could even win the exact same amount or win a few more seats, but it depends on the composition of Parliament. They may not be the swing anymore, right? I mean, that's the other. You could have, for example, a conservative minority propped up by the Bloc Québécois, right? That's an entirely likely scenario. So for them, it makes much more logical sense to support the Liberals if the Liberals are going to swing in their direction in terms of splashing cash, than to vote them out. So I mean, I would be shocked if he actually voted them out.
Yeah. Again, I'm thinking about it too much from a logical standpoint and not enough from a survivalist standpoint, or just that little bit of power.
Well, it's a little bit is better than zero.
That's true. You know what though? I've said it before. I'll say it again. I never thought I would miss Jack Layton. But I miss that dude, the crazy thing about, and maybe I'm remembering him in a romantic way that he actually wasn't, but I remember he was still like, he was like a socialist, if that's a word, but I seem to remember him being more fiscally responsible than the current iteration of the NDP party.
Well, the NDP. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark. You're gonna jump in there.
I was just gonna say, I would argue that's because socialism has changed, right? There's been to Dr. Zorbas' point, you've got these activists and these academics that are now in the party that are really driving the ideology. So it's I hate to disparage it, but like you say, it's kind of like the grown-ups have left the room. Like Jack Layton was more financially conservative because that's the right socialist or democratic socialist way to operate, right? Like when you look at democratic socialist countries, they're not always, there's a sense that they're always like drunken throwing cash everywhere, but they're not. Now we're seeing a move to do drunken cash throwing or helicopter money, for as it's been called, in this country and in other countries now through that are socially democratic countries. So it's not actually part of the true, I hate to, because there's no true Scotsman fallacy here, I don't want to pull that, but the true socialist ideology really isn't about spending money like an idiot either. So
Mark, too,
I think that's why.
If I can support that, because it's a really great point. The reality is, if you look at Canada, if you look at NDP governments in Canada, historically, they actually balance their budgets.
Right.
The Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan NDP, when they ran, they inherited one of the worst budget messes ever from the Grant Devine Conservatives. The Grant Devine Conservatives spent, and apparently near the end, when they knew they were going to lose, they spent like drunken sailors to drive the country into debt, hoping that the NDP would have to take such draconian measures that they would be, forever blamed for it. And the reality is that the NDP balanced the budgets.
My grandmother loved Roy Robinette.
Well, yeah, and a lot of NDP governments across Canada, when they were elected, tended to do this. As Mark said, we're seeing a sea change now, right? Because the problem with when we talk about the left spending money, the left used to spend money by raising taxes, which makes sense, right? It's to me, this makes logical sense. I understand. You say, we want more social programs. Cool. Next question. How do you pay for them?
Yeah.
We're going to raise taxes. Now, whether you agree with raising taxes or not, at least that answer makes sense.
At least it balances.
Yeah, it balances. This will cost this. We will do this to get that money. That's how we'll do this. After the throne speech, of course, we'll probably talk about this in a little bit, but Trudeau went on TV and gave a televised address where he went, I can't remember the exact quote, but something along the lines of, and lots of people are saying, how are we going to afford this? With interest rates so low, will they pay? And I thought,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. What you're saying is you're just going to borrow all that money, but you have to pay back the money you borrow.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
It's like saying I bought a McLaren instead of a Grand Caravan because the McLaren dealership was offering 0% interest, so I can afford it.
Yeah. The money has to get, and so what's happened, I think, is that many of the socialists and the left-leaning parties have now embraced deficit spending, which, by the way, used to be a right-wing thing, right? The Republicans, the conservatives in Canada, those are the guys that used to always borrow rather than raise taxes, and now we're seeing the left do that.
Can I just point out, and we probably should get back on track, but can I just point out really quickly the irony of the leftist ideology right now? With, on the one hand, like you just said, they've embraced the deficit spending, which surely is screwing the next generations to come. But they're the ones screaming in everybody's face about how you have to stop screwing the next generation, okay, boomer. You screwed the next generation, and we need to save the planet for the next generation. And like those two, like that, there's not even a natural, any sort of logical progression of thought there between those two things. Those two things are contradictory to each other.
Well, okay, if I can, I think I can help explain, sort of square that circle, if you will, and that is, you're assuming that the capitalist system, the goal is to continue on with the capitalist system, right? If you don't care if the system breaks, then who cares if you borrow money?
Yep.
But then there's no. What system are you replacing it with?
Well, I remember though, that's a thing though. That's just a lack of imagination. There's all sorts of systems that have existed before. We exist in a capitalist system. And
are we going to go back to a trade system?
Well, I'm just saying, if you're a socialist or someone on the left who views capitalism as an inherently bad system, then you have absolutely no problem with bankrupting the system and then moving on to socialism 0.2 or some other variation. Right?
That sounds scary.
Well, and that's just it. Like there's a concerted effort in this academic activist circle or any circles to crash the system. So they don't care what they do to the current system right now. So whether it's deficit spending, and this obviously goes off into a whole different conversation around like the defunding the police and some of these other things that we're seeing. But when you like Jason says, they don't care about the system. They don't care about capitalism. They don't think that it's viable. So they're going.
They obviously don't think about some of the violent ways that other forms of economical systems were enforced in the past.
Right, but when you're in power, you're the one who gets to put the violence out there.
Yeah, I know. Also, that's what the average person the average leftist voter has been thinking about.
But you got to remember too, and this is true, by the way, for the left and the right. Now, you have to understand I have a bias. Being a historian, we do a terrible job of teaching history. So a lot of people on the left and a lot of people on the right don't know the history to be scared of the consequences of their actions, right? So this is why Trump can do all these things and people go, it doesn't matter, he's getting stuff done. And you're going, no, history tells us it doesn't. It matters a lot. History tells us that this is a terrible thing. And then left, the same thing, going, well, there have been experiments with other economic systems like communism in Russia. And we know what happened. We know about the gulags and we know about the show trials. And we know, but if you don't know about them, if you've never been taught these things, right? On both sides, left and right, the lack of historical knowledge, the lack of a sense of, and also a sense of civics and citizenship, a sense of belonging to, we all have to stay. It means you're saying, well, let's roll the dice and see what happens, instead of going, whoa,
You know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen in those systems, and let's say long term there's a better system. There's always going to be that period of anarchy. Regardless of what system you replace it with, you're going through a period of anarchy, and the average person who believes in destroying the capitalist system, man, in any sort of apocalypse, let's put it, in any sort of apocalypse situation, you die first, man. You are the least prepared for any sort of civil collapse,
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I do want to hop on the lefties, and I may even not defend a communist. I would never do such a thing, but at least a socialist. But we have to understand that the capitalist system has failed millions and upon millions of people in the pandemic and over the past 30 years. People have not received a single solitary actual living wage increase since 1980.
Yeah, no, I don't.
So the system has failed. The system has failed a lot of people. So when you have a party or a party or people with ideology going, hey man, we're going to throw a brick through the system. We're going to spend all this money. We're going to give you cash and we're going to blow it all up. And who gives a damn? You know what, man? If you've been screwed over for the past 15, 20 years and you can't get ahead, you're going to say, screw it, throw a brick through the window.
And Mark, if I can just jump onto that, well, the thing is too, when we talk about that, you have right wing parties that are just enabling neoliberalism. And so, if I may,
100%,
if I may, neoliberalism, really short version is not. A lot of people think neoliberalism is liberalism, classical liberalism, but the neoliberalism that's happening today is an ideology that says that rich people should have all the money, and it creates a system that literally funnels wealth to the wealthiest people, and does that through tax cuts for the rich are disproportionately going to help the rich because they have more money, right? So there's all sorts of ways that the money gets funneled up, and so they're helping, as Mark was talking about, all these people who are going, the system is crashing, and then they're looking at all these uber rich people, the billionaires, and they're going, well, let's break the system. Now the problem is, as Kris, as you point out, is when you break the system, people are it's bad. Right. This is why people who've been through wars don't want wars. Right. This is why people who've been through, you have immigrants who survived, conflicts, and they come here and they're going, are you guys crazy? Do you know what it's like, when you have nothing and you have, I've had students over the years who fled civil wars and in Sudan and other places. And they're just going, I have a place to sleep. I'm getting paid, and I'm thrilled. No one's shooting at me. Like, this is so. It's a lack of knowledge in a lot of ways.
Exactly what you were talking about. I was watching a video just today of a person. The guy behind the camera had escaped Soviet Russia, and he starts out by interviewing this lady with a picket sign. This was from like 2012, so this isn't like super recent, but she was representing a socialist party at some election or another. And so he starts asking her, like, what are you doing? She's like, well, this is our candidate. They're not on the ballot. You have to write them in, but you can vote. This is who we want you to vote for, this socialist person. And then he starts asking her a whole bunch of questions about socialism and like what you're promoting exactly. And it's right from the manifesto, everything she's saying. And then he lets her go on for a little while. And then he explains to her, like, I lived in Russia under the Soviet Union, and like, you need to understand that everything you're saying is what we had when I was younger. And like, this is what happened in my country. And that's why I'm living here now. And now I'm watching you who have no idea what I went through and what my countrymen went through, trying to promote the system that ruined my childhood, basically, and caused me to leave my homeland for another land where I actually had freedom. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. But we really should get back.
We got to do an episode on the philosophy that has driven all of this since,
Yeah,
sorry guys,
because we've kind of impromptu gone onto that. But okay, so the budget happens next. The budget will get voted on, and then let's just assume the budget passes because Jagmeet will probably prop it up. So what's the ramifications of that? What happens now?
Then we have, however, another year or so of Liberal government propped up by the NDP. We won't know what the budget looks like until they actually announce it. There'll be debate about it, etc. But for the moment, we do know that they will take the okay of the NDP, and they'll have an effective working majority, and they plan to pump a lot of money into the system. So we'll see a temporary bounce in the economy because all the government money is going in. This is one of the things about this that gets frustrating for a lot of economists, is that you'll see this temporary bounce, but there's a point down the line where you're going to have to start, because the interest payments get so high. We're assuming the interest payments are going to stay low for the foreseeable future, which is great. As long as the interest rates stay low, we're okay. The moment the interest rates start to go up, you're entering periods where, at one point in the 1990s, oh my goodness, you forgive me, I think it was something like 25% of our budget was going to interest payments.
Yeah, it would be about that.
Yeah, was that so? Yeah, so. It's once that starts to happen, now with so much of your budget covering the interest payments, well, you can't pay for all the other things, which is why
75% of your budget is covering 100% of your budget expenses.
Exactly, and then you have all the cuts that have to happen. So there was all this.
That's usually just when the conservative government gets in, takes over for the Liberal government.
Well, but sometimes it can go in reverse as well, too. I mean, the 1990s followed the conservative government of Brian Mulroney.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's unfortunately on both. The urge to resist spending money you don't have is not something that politicians of either left or right have a particular ability to do so. Right. The ability to sort of stick to your guns.
Yeah. So I was just going to say. So there was a quote. It said. And I'm going to do a screen share here for him in 1 second. The quote was, "We took on debt so Canadians wouldn't have to." That's what Justin Trudeau said, right? And so this is what came to mind as soon as I saw it. That's it. Like,
it does take a certain amount of naivete to think that the government can take on debt without you taking on debt.
Like, we are the government.
I know.
Yeah, it's our debt.
It's our debt. We are the government.
Yeah.
But that disconnect, Canadians are unaware of how the system works, and that disconnect has permeated itself all throughout the system. Right?
We really do just want a sugar daddy, don't we?
Well, I think everybody does, though, right? I mean, think about it.
No, I don't. I want my own money. I want to be able to go to the government and say, I bought this AR-15 with my own money, and I'll take care of it, and I'll feed it, and I'll change the litter.
Right, but for a lot of people, they're, if somebody says, hey, we're going to make your life a little bit easier, they're going to go, awesome, thank you, great.
Yeah, I'm like, get the hell out of my way. I'm going to make my own life easier.
No, and I think that's to our earlier conversation, right? You've got a lot of people who, like, a minimum wage job cannot pay the bills, right?
No,
You've
you're
got
absolutely right about
lot
that.
of people who are struggling every single day. Yeah. And as much as if some politician rucks up, or, I don't know how poor you guys have ever lived in your past, but I can tell you I've been in some pretty dire situations. And if somebody had rucked up to me and offered me $100, I wouldn't have cared where it came from, how it got there. It wouldn't have mattered, right? Like,
Mark,
and that's what it boils down to for a lot of people.
I got kicked out of my apartment very shortly after moving out on my own. And I was the guy that was, remember when you could buy minute steak?
Yep.
Because it was meat that you could get that actually wasn't, super expensive. Like I was eating minute steak, and I was I was eating it only twice a week because that's all I could afford. And I was literally buying bags of potatoes in bulk. Like I've definitely gone through that, and I worked a large number of minimum wage jobs early in my life, underpaid, underappreciated, overworked, overabused, all of that sort of shit. And you know what it did for me? It encouraged me to become an entrepreneur so that I could be responsible for my own future and my own finances.
Kris, you're an exception to that. If I may, Mark, I think there's I don't want to veer off too far again, but they've done psychological studies when you have, the idea of certain, you have roses and you have dandelions, right? Dandelions can grow and survive in anything. Roses need certain kind of conditions, right? So some people can take all that kind of stuff like you did and be like, great, I'm going to go on and do other things. And other people get crushed by it. And they don't have the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, the entrepreneurial spirit is a special thing. It's not something that most of us have. I look at you and I go, holy crap, I couldn't do what you do. My younger brother is, before he moved into his current job, he was in sales, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't live, off of commissions, but he was great at it. He was brilliant at it. He was so, he could do that. I couldn't do it. If I had to do that, I'd starve to death. I just don't have the ability to, it's not in me. And I don't have the entrepreneurial spirit. It's just other people in my family do.
And I certainly will not deny that we undervalue many jobs in this country, and we don't pay proper wages for a lot of things in this country. I'll fully admit that. It's also why, as an entrepreneur, I've never paid anyone over the age of 18 minimum wage since ever. Like I believe in those things. I've paid minors minimum wage, but I've never paid anybody over the age of 18 minimum wage.
How many other people are like that though, Kris?
Well,
how many other companies do the same thing?
Yeah,
right?
no, you're absolutely right. That's why I'm a small business that's, even when I'm doing well, I'm only one pandemic away from having one foot in the grave. Mm-hmm. Maybe, but I still don't agree that the answer to all those things is communism.
No, and believe me, to me, communism is never the answer for anything ever under any circumstances, right? Like ever. But the biggest thing is we got to try to put those other shoes on and be like, okay, if I'm a single mom working 2 jobs, trying to take care of my kids, and I'm about ready to get kicked out of my house every time I turn around, and I can't even enjoy, a little bit of reprieve, and somebody comes along and says, hey, here's a little bit of cash if you vote for me, and we'll make your life wonderful. What do people have to lose? Like that's why Trump got in the first freaking place.
I would take their money, tell them I'm going to vote for them, and then on voting day I'd go vote for someone else.
But then you wouldn't get the money because then the programs wouldn't go.
Yeah, but I would also take the money that they gave me to make sure that I wasn't in that situation come voting time.
That's only going to help you for a month.
That's why Trump won. That's why Trump won the 2016 election, was because he was able to promise people who were just like, F it, I'm going to throw a brick through the system. We're going
to be here forever if we keep going off on these tangents. So I think we've talked reasonably about the generalities of exactly how this worked and what's going to be going on in generalities, in the near future and beyond. Let's talk specifically about some of the things and really we're talking about 2 things. We're talking about the throne speech and then Trudeau's address, because Trudeau had Julie Payette do the throne speech so that he could address everybody on his own. Or does the Governor General always do the throne speech?
Yeah, the Governor General, he didn't have her do it. She always does the throne speech. They always
do it, okay. Yeah. But he still needed his time in front of the camera. So he had his address later in the evening. So we're kind of talking about both things here. But in terms of content, they weren't really a whole lot different. So let's talk about some of the highlights. So I kind of categorized some things. The first category that I kind of categorized was I'm calling it, we're going to spend so much money. You think we've spent a lot of money? Well, we're going to spend lots of money now. So a couple of things in that, and just stop me if you guys want to discuss any of these things. But first of all, there was a lot of fear mongering about COVID-19 as a setup. I actually had to stop listening to the throne speech. I listened for maybe 12 or 13 minutes. And I had to stop, and I ended up missing most of the content because I had to leave, because the first 10 minutes was just like pessimism. The world is ending. Things are so bad. Things are so bad. I just got so tired of it. And most of that was around COVID-19. So one of the things they are going to be doing is they're going to be extending the CEWS program. That's the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. That's the 75% subsidy for employers that are paying wages up to $847 a week. As an employer who is going to be able to take advantage of this, most likely, cool. Somehow the announcement, the context that it was announced under was that somehow this is going to create 1 million jobs for the country. I don't know how it's going to create more jobs for the country, but they say it is. And again, guys, if anybody wants to make comments on this stuff, just interrupt me, because otherwise I'm just going through a list. They're saying they're going to extend the CEBA business accounts program. That's the Canadian Emergency Business Account. That's the one that gave business owners up to $40,000 in loans and is going to allow them $10,000 in forgiveness. I don't know, we have no idea. This is all rainbow kisses. We don't know how they're going to be extending this or expanding it or whatever. Are they going to give away more free money? Are they going to, instead of forgiving $10,000 of the $40,000 loan, are they now going to forgive $20,000? Are they going to extend it to $60,000 and they'll forgive $20,000? We don't know.
See, and this is where the budget's going to come in, right? I mean, this is So the throne speech and his speech, televised speech, are essentially just the broad outlines of promises, right? So that, I mean, all these things he's saying until we actually crack the budget, and the budget's always like this ridiculously thick document that's opaque and hard to get through, and they hide all sorts of fun things in there. It's the exact opposite of transparency. We just won't know any of these details. So this is just him making promises, essentially saying we're going to spend a lot of money to try and help you guys out. Like that's the theme he's trying to say, is that we will keep helping Canadians, and that's why the fear mongering happens first, right? The bad thing is still going on. Don't worry, we will save you. Yes, or help you.
How long was the throne speech?
53 minutes.
Just Payette talking was 53 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, it must have been longer than 15 minutes because I remember the tick slider.
When you're saying that, because it was 53 minutes, but most of the COVID stuff was Trudeau.
Yeah, and the speech.
And his speech after the fact.
No, her entire run-up at the beginning was all about doom and gloom and COVID.
Yeah.
Before she actually got into the substance of the throne speech, the whole introduction, the whole lead-up was all doom and gloom COVID.
Yeah, and that's where they're going to. But that's where they're going to go with everything, right? We can't expect anything from this government.
I'm not saying I'm surprised. I'm just saying that it existed.
Right.
Yeah,
it's true. Do you want to keep going down this list?
Sure. Yeah. So they announced child care program extensions and early learning programs under the context of the pandemic has affected women more than men. So they're going to extend child care program and early learning programs. And
now I would jump in here for one second. This is something that it is shameful that we don't have a better childcare program in this country. That is one thing that I've always.
But isn't it the purview of the provinces anyway?
But the provinces don't have the fiscal firepower to do this. I mean, the federal government, in the same way that we have oh my goodness, government subsidized Medicare. We have government paid for healthcare. Sorry, brain froze up there for a second. Yeah. Because the federal government agreed to cover half of the price of it back in 1961 or the 1960s. If we're going to have a national daycare program, or at the very least an accessible daycare program, it's going to have to be spearheaded by the federal government. I mean, that's just the reality. In terms, none of the other provinces are going to be able to afford to do it by themselves.
Yeah, like
when you don't think that funding the provinces and allowing the provinces to have the purview that they're supposed to have anyway, and not reaching past them to create a national program would be the better solution.
But there already are provincial programs. Quebec has their own health, or their own early or they have their own program, right?
Sure.
Like Quebec runs their own.
That's because it's provincial purview.
Because it's provincial purview. That's fine. But like Jason says, you can't, like Saskatchewan just simply could not afford to run a program like this without some federal transfer payments coming our way. But
they didn't announce money for provinces for these programs. They said that they're going to create these programs.
We're going to see, yeah. Well, and how that goes out and through the budgets and all that, we'll see. What I took issue with is I actually watched the minister of some of these titles are whatever it is, child.
Oh, right. Equality and
whatever.
It's a very long one.
Yeah, and he was being interviewed on CBC about this, and he's saying it's so funny that I can't. Vabash, is that how you say her name on CBC I can't think of her name. Anyway, she's always anyway, she does such a great job because she'll kick the conservatives in the teeth just as much as she kicks the liberals in the teeth. I just love her. Anyway, and she straight up asks, she's like how long is it going to be for you guys to set this up? And he's like hemming and hawing and giving all the platitudes and this and that, and she's like, no, how long, right? And so as this interview goes on, it basically they're looking at a 5-year plan. So like, it's not going to be a thing anyway. It's going to fail, right? Like, and he goes, we're basically going to take the Quebec model and we're going to expand it out. He goes, and we've done all this work nationally to set up this bedrock, and blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, no, you're not. And you're looking at a 5-year plan. This is where they are today. So we're not, so a lot of this stuff. And so if we look at the child care program and some of these other things, these are platitudes. These are the Liberals saying we're for good things, not bad things, and we're probably not going to see a lot come out of it, quite frankly.
Are you talking about the Minister for Women and Gender Equality?
No, I can't think of his name right now.
Oh, it's a he.
It was a gentleman. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll post it or we'll mention it at the end.
The thing that I found funny is that, I mean, obviously this is targeted towards women. Okay. It's a pretty transparent attempt to get women on side with what they're doing. And I get all that, but doesn't childcare program extensions and early learning programs, like, is that really targeting women, or is that targeting families with both parents working or any single parent family?
Well, I mean, but it targets women insofar as when they talk about how the COVID crisis disproportionately hurts women. Even today, we still have a gender divide where in houses where both spouses work, women do the bulk of the child rearing. And so if the kid gets sick, it's almost always the wife who gets called and leaves her job to go and deal with this. So when you don't have daycare spots or daycare is unavailable or tough, it's almost always the woman who gets stuck and takes the career hit. So in that context, I mean, I know it happens over and over again. So that's how this appeals to women. Having quick, easy, accessible daycare will help, simply because it's mostly women who end up having to do.
And even further to that, women make up the vast majority of low-paying jobs, like part-time jobs, low income. Women, disproportionately. What do you call it? Jesus, why can't I think of it? Minimum wage jobs. So anywhere where we can support, and this is the thing, is I support this program 100%. Like to your point, like Jason, like the fact that we don't have one of these programs that exists in this country is repugnant. Quite frankly, it's obscene. So anyway,
do you think it'll happen?
It needs to happen. No.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. They've been talking about this. The Liberals have been talking about bringing in a national daycare program. I think, for 30 years.
I was going to say, literally as far back as I can remember.
I do. Yeah, no, it is for sure. Because they were talking about this under Crutching. And in the 90s. It's been 30 years. God, I'm getting old. Holy darn.
Well, you're older than us, but I think the only reason that I am not aware of it is just because I've never had children, so I've never paid attention to those sorts of things. But
yeah, so this is it. We should have it now. The difference is that the Liberals are planning on paying for this using deficit spending again, which means it's not a sustainable program, as opposed to doing. And this is the problem I have with a whole lot of this stuff, left or right. There's and my essential gripe with how the Liberals are going to go about this with the support of the NDP, and then and the right wing did this. The Conservatives have done a lot of the same thing. If you want to pay for this stuff, you have to bite the bullet and you have to raise the taxes. And I mean, you're going to take a political hit. That's the reality. But if you are if you're brave and you are politically astute and you articulate it and you go, look, and see, the other problem is they're trying to hit everything, right? Instead of going, look, we're going to raise the GST by 1%. And we're going to take that 1% and we are going to fund daycare spaces for every single Canadian who possibly needs daycare spaces. That's what it's going to go to. Everyone can, take that to the bank.
Do you really think that's not coming though, Jason? Like, do you see that coming? If let's say they ride out the rest of this term propped up by the NDP, like for the next 3 years, do you think that they won't raise the GST or any other sort of taxes?
I think that they'll spend all this money and then they'll have no choice but to start trying to raise taxes. Yeah. But they, at that point, because everything has been decoupled from, they've just been borrowing money to pay for these new programs. So the structural deficit has grown so much that they won't raise taxes enough to actually deal with the problem, because now the problem has gotten too big. And then, so they'll raise taxes a little bit, but the deficit will keep going and going. And then eventually what ends up happening is at some point down the road, whichever government's in charge is now going to have to go on a fire sale and cut services dramatically and cut, sell property. And I mean, literally sell property. Like this is what was happening in the 90s. This is what they just started selling. Okay, so we have these buildings. The Harper government had started to do that at one point after 2008. They were literally selling. We had valuable land in London, and they were like, "Well, we'll sell our buildings because we need to start generating income in some way." Right. So all of this essentially just puts a reckoning point down the line, and that's the part that bothers me a lot. This budget, it's the ideas behind it. We can debate the merits of it, but paying for it through deficit spending just means that 10 years from now, the whole thing is they're going to have to cut all this stuff again.
Right. Yeah. So on to the next item here in terms of spending. They're going to expand airline routes. Mark, I'm sure you're happy about that one.
Bankrupt every airline. Bankrupt them all.
Bankrupt them all.
I don't even care if they're successful. Bankrupt them. Doesn't matter.
How do you plan on getting around Canada without airlines?
No. We bankrupt them all, and then they reform as proper, organized companies that aren't full of.
Mark is the Che Guevara of airlines.
Absolutely, man. My seat or my life. I don't care, man. Like it just. Don't even get me started. We'll just continue on.
Mark doesn't like
airlines.
So on to the next one. And they're also talking about creating a whole new EI program, modernizing the EI program. I'm scared to think of what that's going to look like, but I really think that I want you guys' opinion on this. Do you guys think that he's trying to implement a universal basic income without implementing a universal basic income?
I won't be surprised if I see that coming, or if that actually happens.
But will he even have to? If it makes it easy for everybody to get CEBA and EI and everything else, and you don't really have to work, you don't have to have a basic income anyway.
Well, you don't have to call it UBI for it to be a UBI.
Well, that's my point. Do you think he's trying to implement a UBI and avoid the word? Zorba, you're the man. What do you think?
You know what? I wish that was the case, because that would lead me to believe that there was ultimately a plan in place, that they've sat down, they've crunched numbers, and they've said, "All right, this is what we're trying. We're going to build this incrementally, as opposed to loading the shotgun and just going and letting the bullets scatter wherever they go and hoping to win re-election."
Does this look like a measured approach, or does this look more to you like a shotgun blast?
this looks like a shotgun blast. I mean, this government has not had any kind of coherence for the last since they've won, and but we haven't seen it. We haven't seen a government with coherence in almost a decade. I mean, I think you have to go back to the first year of Stephen Harper's majority government in 2011 to find a government that had a coherent plan, and then his plan got scuttered by Duffy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a. If I support a universal basic income. I think a universal basic income, if you get rid of everything else, and just said, so if they were building towards it and then they finally said, hey guys, you know what? Let's just do a universal basic income. I'd be like, great, they have a plan. Whether you like the plan or not, at least there's a plan. Then we can debate the merits of the plan. But man, I just don't have that. As I said, the sense I get is they're opening the cupboard and they're grabbing whatever's in their fridge, and they're just going splat, splat. Let's see what sticks in the wall.
Yeah, it's the spaghetti wall approach to creating a UBI.
Well, I don't think the plan is ultimately to create the UBI, though. That's my thing.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think they're sitting here going, we're going to create a UBI. I think they're throwing crap against going, this will help these people, this will help these people, this will help these people, because the UBI would be so much easier. And it would have cross support, too. Hugh Siegel is a huge fan of UBI, conservative senator, for people who don't know. Worked in the Mulroney government. I mean, there's lots of right-wing economists who say, it'll be a lot easier than all of these, ad hoc, Is this a universal basic income? Boom.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you 100%, Jason. I think they're throwing crap at the wall. But yeah, like UBI, I've been screaming about a UBI for 15 years. Like we need this. You just think of the red tape that you get rid of. Just think of all the crap that would. Oh my God! Like if a person is conservative or libertarian and they don't see the value in just going this direction, to me is just it's insane.
Well, sorry, if I could just touch real quick, Mark, and then you can go back to it. It just if they were going to do a UBI, if this was part of the plan, the perfect time to do it was 6 months ago when they announced Zorbas.
100%.
Right. When they did, instead of doing, when they were going to roll out, we're going to spend $200 billion, and all this stuff. That was the pandemic time was the perfect time to do a UBI, right? So when you say, do you think they're building up to it? No, because they missed their window. The window
was them too much credit.
I think you're giving way too much credit. Yeah. Sorry, and Mark, I cut you off. You're going to say
no. I was just saying we should move on through our list here. But.
Yeah, so I'll roll through most of this because I don't know how much we're going to even want to talk about most of this.
Why not just cherry pick some of the ones you like?
Sure. So under my second category of We Are the Law, they talked again about their municipal handgun bans, which is stupid because every city so far that has talked about the possibility of having a handgun ban, the province has come and said, actually, that's our purview. And if you do that, we'll block you. Saskatchewan, our province, didn't even say we'll block you. They just said, you know what, we're just going to put this on the books because we know that he's trying to do this. We're just going to pass a law saying that municipalities can't do this. He's talking about speeding up policing on reserves. I think that's just absolutely the wrong focus. How about water? Let's start with water,
housing, medicine.
Yeah, medicine. Start with that stuff. No, they need to be more policed. They need better policing. That's what they need. No, they don't need more essential life services. Just need more policing. Which is incredibly ironic because he's talking. Another point of the throne speech was eliminating systemic racism. We can eliminate systemic racism by giving better policing resources on reserves, but not giving them essential resources. Anyway.
Well, and I'll say this about policing on reserves. One of the ideally reserves would be policed by. So, for example, one of the problems you run into is that with the way the Saskatchewan is done is you have the RCMP coming in, and then you have officers being assigned from anywhere in Canada. So you got some officer growing up in Toronto, and they throw them up in Stanley Mission in north. So it's and then with the history of colonialism and with the very real history where the RCMP were the tools of the government to do things like enforce residential schools.
Yep.
Indigenous peoples don't trust them, right? I mean, they're just like, well, wait a minute. Yeah. And so trying to create more Indigenous policing, as in Indigenous police officers, is great, except here's the thing. The legislation already exists for all this. The problem is they're not pumping money in to help. as you said, in terms of giving the money for education, giving the money for water, pave the roads. Good.
Pave the goddamn roads, right?
Pave the roads. You know, like the number of I have students over the years, and from when I've been up on the reserves, and they'll coming in because they'll have a cohort in one reserve, right? So we'll be at Big River, and then they'll have from Atakakoop and other places coming in, and the students will send me a picture like, Jason, I can't make it in today, and they show me a picture of their car, and the car's like this in mud up to the up to the door because it rained, and they're like, I'm like, well, yeah, man,
it's funny. I was my family was living in Regina, but I was actually born in La Ronge, and my parents had some good friends in that area when I was super young, and the only thing that I can remember about the reserve near La Ronge is the mud roads. It's literally the only memory I have of it, because I can remember being on a quad. Like, I don't even know how old I was, just zipping up and down the road in front of their house, and it's just a mud road, like we were out in the middle of nowhere.
So if I can touch on this for a second, bringing this back to what we're talking about, you know, paving the roads, getting everyone with fresh water, all of that is the kind of things you can do deficit spending on, right? That's
sure.
Exactly. It makes sense to do deficit spending on that kind of stuff, because ultimately it will produce economic benefits down the road. All of these programs that they're talking about, however, you can't finance a national daycare program on deficit spending because it becomes structural. Right, whereas the one-time payment to pave the roads. Now, sure, you're gonna have maintenance, et cetera, but you can say, okay, we paved the roads. Now we're generating all this economic activity. This is awesome. Da 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 da. You can't hire policing on deficit spending because those officer salaries are gonna have to get paid every single year, as opposed to giving them high speed internet, right? Which is another
right. Yeah. Why? Yeah.
So that they have better access to education.
Exactly. But none of that stuff gets you the votes in the same way as promising and this or that or daycare or CERB or all of paid for by deficit spending.
Yeah.
All right. So this is one of the disconnects we see.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm going to move on to the next one though. Stiffer criminal penalties for care home abusers. Like, yes. Okay.
Like Como?
Like why now? We've known.
I think the better question is not why now. The better question is, really? This reminds me of 9/11, if you will. And I know that sounds weird, but bear with me for a second. Okay. After 9/11, the government of Canada passed an anti-terrorism bill. It was our version of the Patriot Act.
Right.
And a lot of lawyers went through this thing, and they went, all of this is unnecessary. All of this extra power you're giving the RCMP, all of the security certificates, the ability to do the work already exists in law. This is all security theater, right?
Because assault is already illegal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being a terrible person when you're the nurse and not taking care of them is already illegal. They don't need to stiffen the penalties. What they need to do is stiffen the oversight. Right? They need to make sure that people are visiting these places. Like, and there's also
not just on a policing end, but they need to have better resources for enforcement in the judicial system.
Well, exactly,
but not specifically for care home abusers, for people who are for people committing assault. Period.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the idea of specifically targeting care home abusers and upping the penalties and somehow that will cure the problem is ludicrous.
No,
the problem is,
and that's with almost any crime, right? Like, oh, I was going to go abuse that old person, but I'm going to do an extra 5 years in jail. Like, what? That doesn't stop anybody, right? Like, that's the lunacy.
You'll be asking for ID before you rob somebody just to make sure they're not a senior citizen.
Yes. The problem is there's no oversight. The problem is how we set up these care homes, right? That it's a systemic problem.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that I get frustrated with is that governments don't want to do the hard work. To fix it is hard work, but to say we're going to up the penalties makes it look like you're doing something. without actually doing something.
Well, let's draw those parallels to gun ownership.
I was going to say that's gun ownership 100%. The problem is that guns are getting snuck into the country, and they haven't put in resources in the past 30 years to actually stop the illegal gun trade in this country, because that's hard work. So I
do find it ironic. I do find it ironic that they're going to be talking about stiffer penalties for care home abusers, but not other criminals at a time when Toronto is seeing there have been more shooting deaths in Toronto since May 1st when the Order in Council came in than there were in the 12 months leading up to it. Anyway,
yeah, it's absolutely insane.
My next category was we will save the world with taxes. So by this, I mean like the Green Initiative. They reiterated their promise to plant 2 billion trees. As far as I know, not one have been planted. And this is a 2015 campaign promise, 5 years old.
I do want to comment on this, because this kind of is our earlier conversation. So I don't know if it's law, but I've been out I've been out in British Columbia. I have an uncle who sells logging machinery to logging companies, right?
Yep.
Like so you literally drive through these roads and you go see. So for every tree that gets cut down there, they plant 3.
Yeah. As far as I know, that's already law.
So I'm no mathematician, but 3
this
is more
one is
than
complete theater. This planting trees thing is complete theater.
Oh yeah. See, again, though, the problem is if you want to fix it, this goes to and to short version is it's systemic again, right?
Yeah.
If we want to shift towards less pollution, which most people agree is a good thing, right? If we want to make the changes towards more renewable energy, you actually have to invest in the infrastructure, and you have to change the system. The government picks winners all the time. This whole crap about government should pick winners. Government picks winners all the time. This is it's completely, but it involves a lot of effort to try and make systemic changes. It involves a lot of effort. And instead of doing that, they're trying to do we're going to plant trees, or they take the idea of Green Initiative and then they attach it to a whole bunch of other social progressive ideas. Right. And all of a sudden it's no longer about the environment. It's about completely changing society. And all these people who support changing the environment but don't want to radically alter society are going, well, I'm out.
Yeah, well, I'm one of those people, right? I've been an environmentalist my whole life, right? But now you've got these green initiatives that want to upend society, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Well, speaking of environmental initiatives that are going to upend society, they reiterated their plan to meet zero emissions by 2030. So my first thought is, if you're counting the carbon tax as negative emissions, I believe you'll get there and you'll solve your income problem at the same time just with the carbon tax. But in terms of actual emissions, not a chance. And all you're going to do is destroy our economy, because so much of Canada's economy relies on oil and gas.
Well, and the fact of the matter is we are going to transition away from fossil fuels. That's not even a question. Historically, we will transition away.
But it's not going to happen tomorrow.
It's not going to happen tomorrow. And by 2030, sure, setting goals, but you got to set realistic goals. But we're going to have to burn more emissions to be able to get us to a point where we don't need to freaking burn more fossil fuels. There will come a counterbalance when we've produced enough batteries and enough solar panels and enough everything to actually take
I don't think it's that.
That's down the future.
It's not going to be producing enough batteries and solar panels. It's going to be the next technological breakthrough. It's going to be when somebody creates a sealed aerobic lithium battery that produces 4 times the amount of energy as current lithium batteries, and all of a sudden the electric car, instead of having a 200 mile per charge, has an 800 mile per charge. Like it's technology that's going to get us there, the next technological breakthrough. It's not going to be manufacturing. But what is going to help us actually recover from the pandemic, the economy, is going to be our oil and gas sector, if we actually want to recover.
Right, but I mean, there's also things in the meantime that they could do to help move away from that in terms of in terms of affecting green, if the goal is to reduce carbon emissions, if the goal is there are ways they could do it. For instance, you could invest in you could literally put in a high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary. They've been talking about this for ages, right? Yeah. Dramatically reduce the number of cars on that highway. If you government could step in and say, hey, we're going to do this. They could invest in public infrastructure to make it because people don't take the buses because the buses suck, right? And they go, government goes, we can't run this, so they don't, right? But these are all things that again would involve them having to. It doesn't have the flair of do this, do that. It doesn't have the flair is the best word.
You could bankrupt all the airlines, have those companies collapse, and then reorganize them in an efficient way that doesn't pollute so much.
Put a bullet train from all the way along the Transcan.
Well, sure. Or routes that make sense, and a seat that doesn't make me sit like this for 4 hours.
It could work.
We're going to need to invent teleportation. That's all there is to it. Okay, so my fourth category here was we will pretend that provinces don't exist. So I already talked about the municipal gun bans. That's provincial territory. They mentioned universal pharmacare. As far as I understand it, that's provincial territory. They can provide better funding for it, but it's supposed to be the provinces are supposed to be doing that. And we already discussed childcare and we discussed already that being purview of provinces and national and benefits and everything. So we'll skip over that. My last category is eliminating systemic racism. And this whole thing is just like, you're just saying pretty words. And for me, if you want to eliminate systemic racism, we already talked about it. You got to provide actual needed resources, number one. And needed resources don't get much more needed than, clean drinking water, water and air. And we don't even have water on all the reserves in this country. And the other thing too is, I forget which First Nation it is now, but when they bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and then they talked about consulting and reconciliation and all this sort of stuff, but then they just didn't consult with, God, I wish I had the name of the group. It went very, very quietly because everybody was up in arms about the other pipeline, in the natural gas pipeline in BC. And I can't remember the name of the First Nation, but they just completely sidestepped the consultation process with that pipeline in Manitoba. So I mean, that's
if anybody wants
put your money where your mouth is.
Have a conversation. Well, yeah, and if anybody wants to have a conversation about systemic racism, all I have to do is point you to the fact that we have INAC that still operates the way it does. So for those of you who don't know, it's
of course
the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada.
Did they rename it to Indigenous? They don't say Indian anymore?
They don't say Indian, yeah, but it's still
thank God there's no more systemic racism because they changed that name.
Yeah, the fact that INAC still operates the way it operates. You want to stop systemic racism? I can give you a government-run frickin' ministry that needs huge sweeping changes that would better the lives of Indigenous Canadians all the time. So when you're sitting there telling me about how you want to help racialized Canadians, especially the First Nations and Indigenous people in this country, you know what? You got to open your own closet. Look at INAC. A prime example, and I'll tell this really as quickly as I can. We were just talking about First Nations and all this sort of stuff, and what people don't realize, so you'll hear that First Nations people get all their Medicare covered and they get their medicine covered and this sort of stuff, right? INAC has to go through an approval process for this First Nation person. So a person from a First Nation has to come to a place. They're not feeling well. They go to the clinic because they don't have one on the reserve. So they got to go to a clinic in a town. They get
No, they don't. They can have the RCMP chop their door down with an axe and have a nurse come take a look at them.
They then get the prescription from the clinic. They then go have it filled by the pharmacy. Do they get it free and take it home? No. They have to go back home, wait for INAC to approve it, and have it shipped out to the First Nation. This process could take 3 or 4 weeks. Well, you have a freaking infection. That's just one small example of the bullshit that INAC does and how they purposefully keep down Indigenous people in this country every single day. So when the Liberal government, Conservative government, NDP, I don't give a crap who you are. If you want to help systemic racism, you got to start with
Well, and I'll say this about and everything you said is, I mean, I could add a whole bunch of
right, exactly.
Stories, the way that they do the funding and the reserves. But I think the biggest thing for me is getting rid of systemic racism is a laudable goal. The problem is that this is a government that has made a lot of noise about it, and then almost at every single turn, when they've had an opportunity to demonstrate it, has done the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is a government that said we promote women and Indigenous people, and then got rid of Jody Wilson-Raybould. The first Indigenous female justice minister for having morals. For the love of God,
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, this is the guy that says
Isn't there
we
still...
believe the women as long as I don't get accused. Right? I mean,
that's right. Isn't there still tens of? Yeah, I have 50% cabinet because it's 2017. Screw you, Jody Wilson-Raybould. You didn't do what I said.
Yeah.
Isn't there still, wasn't there a program that was announced in 2016 or 17 or something like that, that's supposed to be, hundreds of millions of dollars that are supposed to go to reserves across the country that still hasn't been dispersed?
Well, I'm not sure. It could be the reason I say I'm not sure is because there's so many different things that they're supposed to be doing that they haven't been. It's actually hard to go, wait, which one? I mean, I can tell you, for instance, that there was a court case that went against them where a human rights tribunal said that the government owed First Nations children something in the range of $2 to $3 billion because of massive systemic racist underfunding. And this government, First Nations are our most important, appealed that court ruling.
Right.
And you just go, wait a minute. What are you doing? So anyway, I find, to me, it's hard work listening to them, the Liberal government, talk about this repeatedly and then take the exact opposite action on so many.
It's not even an all talk and no action. It's talk and the opposite action.
Yeah, right. All talk, no action would be better because at least then nothing bad is happening.
That's right.
It's the all talk, and then as you said, going in the other direction, you're going, if you did nothing, that probably would have been better than what you did do.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I mean that's awesome. Really the breakdown of the highlights of the throne speech. Trudeau's address was basically the same thing, only you're right, he talked a lot more about COVID. And, he, thank God we have him to tell us that Thanksgiving is ruined. We can't have Thanksgiving, just so you guys know. But if we're really good...
Halloween. We can have Halloween.
Well, no, apparently we can't have that either.
What? No, the government just announced it 2 days ago. We're having Halloween.
Oh, we are having Halloween.
We are having Halloween.
But not Thanksgiving.
My kids... No, but my kids are thrilled.
Do people not realize? I love this. I'm sorry, I just have to comment on this because people like, we're not allowed to have Halloween. There's no Halloween. I'm like, who? They don't get to decide if there's fucking Halloween. If people want to walk around and do it, they're going to do it. Mark. What are you going to do?
The thing. In 2020, this is what's happening in Commonwealth countries. In 2019, you could say, the government can't tell me I can't have Halloween. They can't tell me I can't walk around in the street and go up to strangers and have candy. But then you see things in other Commonwealth countries, like Melbourne in Australia, where women are literally being tackled to the ground and choked with two hands up against the wall because they're not wearing a mask. Like, we are living in a time that is... like all bets are off, man. And when the Prime Minister says Thanksgiving is canceled, God damn it, Thanksgiving is canceled. He's the Prime Minister. And when he says if we're really good, we just might be able to salvage Christmas. I believe.
Yeah, we are. Are we on Get Off My Lawn already? Because it seems like
we literally just as soon as I started talking about systemic racism, like that set Mark off, and then he set me up. It's a domino effect. It's ridiculous. So anyway, there were a couple of quotes that were maybe just mentioning if for a laugh, if nothing else. Mark, you already mentioned we took on debt so Canadians wouldn't have to. I thought this was hilarious from Julia Payette. Okay, I'm just going to read the quote, okay? Like a reed in high winds, we may sway, but we will not break, because our roots are firmly in place. Our goals are clear. And because we have hope, the hope that lifts the soul on dark days and keeps us focused on the future. If that's not a "we will fight them on the land, we will fight them in the air" sort of speech, I don't know what is. Did you guys know that we're reeds? We're water weeds.
Well, it was very poetic. You got to give it, the
Sure,
speechwriters
yeah,
who
very
wrote that.
poetic.
It's very poetic, but it is interesting though. I mean, there's an old saying that says a crisis is a terrible thing to waste.
Yes.
Right. And that's very much the mentality that this government is now taking at this point. Right. Yes. The interesting thing is that this is obviously an election strategy, because 6 months ago when this happened, they didn't have any. It's not like they sat there and went, all right, hey, we have all these ideas. This hit. They went scrambling, and then all of a sudden now their popularity, they got hit with the scandals, the WE scandal. They managed to destroy this Canadian charity. Which is a whole other thing which we should at some point maybe talk about, but not tonight, I know. And then all of a sudden they came up and they went, you know what? Hey, there's a crisis going on. We should try to use that to motivate everybody to make
this minority government.
Exactly. Everyone loves to pull together, right? I mean, to fight the good fight. I mean, that is literally Trump's whole thing, right? That's his whole create an enemy.
I've always said that Trump and Trudeau are the same person on opposite ends of the spectrum.
One with better
hair. Yeah, well, but a stupider nose.
Well, which is which? No, sorry.
It's hard to tell when you're talking about some of their stuff. But no, they're literally the same person. The only difference is one's a socialist and the other one's a fascist. Like, there's really not a lot of difference between them.
That's modern politics now.
Well, that's true too. So the third quote, and then we'll maybe wrap this up a little bit. But the third quote is, they said that their strategy was based on 3 foundational blocks, and their third foundational block literally was building back better. They just took word for word the alliteration from Joe Biden's economic portion of his campaign. So I thought that was kind of funny that we're just quoting Creepy Uncle Joe.
And Creepy Uncle Joe stole that from a British politician, labor politician from the 1980s. So,
did he really?
He did, yeah.
Since when are we calling Joe Biden Creepy Uncle Joe? What
you don't know about that?
No, I've heard that. I'm just saying, you guys are going back. I'm like, whoa. Well, Sleepy Joe I could get behind, but Creepy Joe? Come on, he's the opposite of creepy.
He's sniffing young girls' hair, man.
Sniffing young girls' hair. Goodness sakes.
Well, he did accidentally grab his granddaughter's chest on national television.
Oh, for goodness sakes! We're talking about a guy who's running against a president who bragged about grabbing women's private parts.
Well, no, hey,
100%.
Don't get me wrong. There's no hero in this story. And that also is the other thing too, is like I may really this may, like, our current federal government may be the first government in my lifetime that I've ever actually hated. I've disagreed with many governments. I've never hated one before. This is all new territory for me. But there is also the thing that I'm just a political cynic, really, and like I've never been very fair to politicians on either side of the aisle, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm exactly what you were talking about the last time, Jason, when you were talking about that we're too hard on our politicians. Yeah, that's me. I'm very much a cynic when it comes to politics.
Fantastic.
But that's pretty much going to do it for that. But Jason, you wanted to talk really quickly about the American politics and with the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg comes the appointment of a new Supreme Court justice. And take it away.
You know what? I know that because I know Mark's got to go there too, so I'll keep it. I'll keep this like super short. For Canadians, if you're listening to this, it could be worse. That's we talk about a lot of things, but it could be worse. I look at the states and I look at this is going to be such a horrible, divisive election, and the Supreme
Court. It's going to be
Court.
bad, isn't it?
Oh, it's going to be bad. And the Supreme Court pick now. I mean, the sort of rank hypocrisy of filling this seat with 45 days of just jamming it through. I mean, I look at that and I look at what's happening in the States and all the protests and the divisions, and I go, okay, well, it's not great here, but it definitely could be worse.
You're only saying that because you're not a gun owner.
It's like living in an apartment above a crack den.
It's like living in an apartment above a crack den that is also a crack den, or it's a meth lab.
That's on fire.
Yeah. It's a meth lab that has a smoker as its occupant.
Well, I mean, the reality is, the great thing about Canada is we don't have these sort of sharp divisions that we're seeing in the States that are. I mean, I don't get we're arguing about in Canada, about these issues, but it's not. We're not tearing apart the fabric of the country in the way that we're seeing it being torn apart in the States, right?
Not for lack of trying by our current government, but I agree with you.
Yeah, it might be for lack of trying, for whatever, but our body politic has managed to, the whole pretty good, conspite all of this. And you look at the States and, they're coming apart at the seams in a lot of places. So yeah, I mean, suffice it to say, I'm happy to live in Saskatchewan right now.
That's awesome. It's very heartening. It's very heartening to hear that, from somebody who's an expert like you, Jason, that you're not concerned that the whole thing is going to collapse around us. So I guess I have to wait a little bit longer for the zombie apocalypse. But thanks so much, Jason, for joining us today. Really appreciate you spending some time with us, de-educating us on the throne speech, on Trudeau, and all the ranting and raving that we did. It was so great having you here.
Well, you know what? It's my pleasure, guys. It's always great to come on and chat with you guys, and of course, seeing the three of us outside of the gym is always a treat as well. But you know me, I can talk politics all the time, every time. My family actually thanks you because it stops me from talking to them about politics. So.
Well, I think we're going to have to bring you on again yet, because I think we're in some pretty interesting political times, and unintentionally, I think the majority of our episodes have been political, and that really was not our intention when we were conceptualizing this show. But hey, what the hell? Let's go with it. So I know we'll have you on again, and it was great talking to you.
It was great to be here, and I'll just say this: everything is political. Right. So when you end up being in politics, that's because everything is political.
Truth.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. Take it easy.
All right. I'd really like to thank Dr. Jason Zorba for joining us again. It's always great having him on. We really need to have him on more often because he's just fun to talk with. And he knows he ain't no dummy.
It's true.
And man, did we get sidetracked on that conversation or what?
Oh yeah, but you know what? I think it was such a good conversation, and we went down some rabbit holes that needed
going down.
Dug at. Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty awesome.
Chris agrees. So, hey, it's time to. We kind of told a lot of people to get off our lawn at the beginning of the episode. And that is going to completely contradict my get off my lawn this week. But you're first anyways.
All right. Sounds good. So I want to start off by quoting the great American thinkers and poet, Alabama.
Oh my God.
I'm in a hurry. I'm in a hurry, and I don't know why. Russian, till life's no fun. This song seems to have become the anthem of all the Bobs and Karens in the world. Now I know rushing to get from A to B isn't the best way to conduct oneself, but it seems that you are in a perpetual state of I'm the most important thing in the world and will drive or walk or whatever pace I so choose. The few seconds gained by paying attention at red lights, while seeming insignificant to you, actually causes a cascading effect that slows down people at the end of the line, causing them to have to stop at a red light again. Or the dilly-dallying you do while ever so carefreely strolling through the mall while I have to get to Edo, Japan. Sure, I seem like I'm the jerk for rushing, but you, your bags, and 3 friends with identical haircuts are the inconsiderate ones, taking up space, not allowing me to pass. I move with cat-like efficiency through the crowd of people to get to my teriyaki chicken, not cutting anyone off and not bumping into bypassers. But your slow ass just stole 10 minutes of my lunch break, Debbie. We see this inconsiderate non-movement every day. People with kids strolling without a care in the world while cars allow them to pass. I pick up my kid and rush across the street because I know that those folks in the car are busy people just like me. I cannot fathom why a person would ever drive the speed limit when no cops are around. Everyone knows you can go 10 kilometers over the speed limit.
10,
It's
man, if there's no
perfectly
cops
fine.
around, I'm doing 20.
20 at least, right? Why you would walk 4 people abreast and never check behind you while walking down the street, or how you would stand and fiddle with your phone while standing in the doorway while I'm trying to get through. How are you so oblivious to the world? And even when I say, excuse me, in the perfect Canadian apologetic way, nothing, just a dopey malaise over your dumb, stupid, dumb face. Don't you want to get where you're going? And before you drop it's the journey that's important line on me. No clown shoes. You're walking into the Olive Garden. So move it and get off my lawn. I need my breadsticks.
I have a feeling that there was a confluence of events that happened this week that has led to that rant.
It's just like everywhere I went this week, everywhere. It was like, is no one in a hurry? Like, what is going on here?
You know what? As somebody who, that whole, first of all, I need some Edo Japan this week now. Right. For those of you who don't know, it is like a rice noodle and
so good.
Rice box or Asian noodle teriyaki Asian joint. I don't know, whatever. It's a restaurant, and it is one of, if not the best tasting fast food Asian food that you can get anywhere. Yeah, anywhere. And like I know somebody who's like a huge food aficionado and just like loves restaurants everywhere he goes. Hi, Pat. I don't think Pat listens, but just everywhere he goes, it's like restaurant. We were in Banff last year, and he's like, "Oh, I'm in Western Canada. Is there an Edo in Banff?" and yeah, so we got like, it was like a group, I think there were like 6 or 7 of us business owners. We were there for like this conference, and like me and another guy walked over to the Edo a couple of blocks away from our hotel, and like came back with this like smorgasbord of Edo Japan, and everybody had Edo for lunch that day.
Oh, that's so good.
First of all, I need to have some Edo.
Yeah.
Second of all, screw these people.
Yeah. I just don't understand the not trying to get where you're going. Like I say, it's not people have this attitude of like, well, I'm taking my time, but like,
why? Do you have nothing to do?
You have nothing to do, really? Like, even if you save 10 minutes, you could watch more Netflix. You could do anything else.
Yeah,
like,
but I haven't worked since March. And I watched so much Netflix that I had a stroke.
Exactly. Get a hobby then. Like,
walking is my hobby, but I only have one leg.
And it's so bad.
I really should not be making fun of people with strokes.
My
dad died of a stroke. That's not
and
funny.
differently able people, differently able people as well. Yeah. So. Anyway, who should have your lawn?
Yeah. So mine. Hey, man, nobody. Bad drivers, Karens, drive-through employees who can't read an order ticket, Trump haters, Trump supporters. I ain't even mad today. I can't promise that you will ever get another day of reprieve from me ever again. But today, you all can't keep me down. Watch your ass tomorrow, though, because it's my lawn. You're all weeds, and I just bought a big-ass bottle of weed killer.
Boom.
Everybody gets a freebie this week. I don't know why I can't. You know why I can't complain? Because my fantastic wife came to the gun range with me today on a moment's notice, and so I'm just walking on cloud 9. That's all there is to it. Hey, Mark, who are you shutting out?
I'm going to shout out all the people who are trying to get back to normal. The servers, the store employees, them folks who make me coffee. You're still working in a lame-demic and have to follow these silly rules and cover your faces and have insane people, both anti-maskers and anxiety maskers. How do you like that? Making your lives more difficult than it needs to be. You know what? My hat goes off to you for sure. And I take my hat off, but I've got my headphones on, so I'll just give you a tip of the hat.
Hey, you know what? That was a good one, because everybody who's trying to get back to normal right now really not only deserves support, but deserves respect.
Agreed.
If you know somebody who's trying to reopen their business, I don't give a shit if you need a new hand-sewn plush toy. Go and buy it.
That's right.
Like, go support that person. And, you know, if somebody is trying to get back to work and, you know, they need a ride or I don't care. Just help people out. If somebody needs you to watch their kid for an hour, or because they could only get childcare until 4 o'clock and they're not off work till 5, bring that kid into your friggin' home for an hour. Help that person out, because they're trying to get back to some semblance of normal, and everybody else is screwing them over. So don't you do it too.
That's right. And that was really, like I said, that was what our weekend was really about, was trying to get back to normal and help everybody else get back to normal and just feel that we're not in this crazy situation anymore.
But the cases are surging. Can I share a story before I share my shout out? I forgot all about this. So our provincial government still insists on putting out this semi-detailed, pessimistic post on social media every day that tells you how many new people have been confirmed sick, how many people have been recovered, well, sometimes they say how many people have recovered, and some days they omit that, and the numbers just magically reflect that somebody recovered, and what regions everybody is sick from. And they've even started breaking down details, saying like this business or another has had an outbreak. That's which I'm not necessarily a fan of, but so they do this on a daily basis. Okay. And I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, I'm looking on my phone, and it always pops up in my news feed, whether I want it to or not. And so for some stupid reason, I don't know why, because I don't normally do this, but for whatever reason, it always picks one comment to show you, right?
Right.
One comment that it showed me out of like 85 or 6 at that point. It had only been posted for a short period of time.
The one that makes you angry?
It's the one that makes you the most angry. And you know what it was? Of
course, yeah.
There were 3 confirmed cases in the Prince Albert region, which is really like Prince Albert and as far west as like Shellbrook, and like it's basically Prince Albert and like maybe like 75 to 100 kilometer radius around Prince Albert. Okay. For those who don't know, Prince Albert is a city about a little more than an hour north of our city in Saskatoon. It's they call it the gateway to the north. It's one of your most used bridges across the North Saskatchewan River to access the northern Saskatchewan. So 3 cases they had. And the comment was something to the effect of, oh my God, we need to shut everything back down in Prince Albert. Everybody is doing horribly. I see more people walking around without masks than with masks in this city. And we need to lock everything down again. And I was like, what? 3 cases? And the sky is falling in Prince Albert, and I just lost my tits. Sometimes I can just scroll by that idiocy, but I was just like, get outside, you friggin' hermit.
That's right. So, people are just, their anxiety is so on, they're cranked to 11 with their anxiety right now.
Just no thinking whatsoever.
There's no thinking. They've completely given up all their faculties.
So of course I go on there and I'm like, dude, there's 26,000 people in the city of Prince Albert. Let's say that all 3 of these cases were from the city proper and not from the 100-kilometer radius around it. That's 3 people out of 26,000. Like it might not be time to cry wolf just about yet. And that I think is part of the problem is if this virus mutates tomorrow, and actually becomes the next bubonic plague, or actually becomes the next Spanish flu, which is what it's constantly being compared to. And by the way, not even close, guys.
Not even close.
But let's say that it became the next bubonic plague tomorrow. Everybody would start saying that this is the next bubonic plague, and everybody is dying, and everybody is going to continue to die, and nobody is going to lift a finger to do anything differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have cried wolf so bad over this thing. Anyway, I'm in the wrong section to be bitching here.
Sure.
Here's my shout out. My shout out is my wife, Joanne. She not only indulges my shooting habit, the firearm one, not the intravenous one. The intravenous one doesn't exist. I should probably clarify that as well. And she really doesn't say much about it. She doesn't usually want to shoot with me, but today she came out to the range to be a guinea pig for a maple seed instructor training with me. I've mentioned it a couple times already because I just love her for it. And it was fabulous. So thank you, Joanne. I don't deserve you. And it's a good thing that I'm hung like a horse, because you would leave me otherwise. I don't know. That last part may or may not be true.
But you know what, though? If you put it out there, right? Visualize. One day,
frankly, it doesn't even matter whether it's true or not, because what's important is that everybody listening to this now is going to be thinking, is it true?
Right.
And there's only two people who really know for sure.
Yeah.
And they aren't them. So just plant the seed and watch it grow.
Wow, we need to end this.
Yeah, we really do, don't we? Well, that's just about going to do it for episode 13 on that note. If you guys would like to interact more with us, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/DeEducated. That's DeEducated. All one word. You can find us on patreon.com/DeEducated. Our website is deeducated.ca. You can find our audio version of this podcast wherever podcasts are not sold, wherever they're free, which is pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere.
Just search the DeEducated podcast. You can also find us on YouTube. I think it's just youtube.com/DeEducated. No. It is a series of numbers still, because
you have to search. Unfortunately, you still got to search us. Yeah.
So just search the DeEducated podcast. You will find us. And guys, thanks for joining us for episode 13. We're really looking forward to talking to you guys again next week. We would love to hear your guys' comments. Talk to us about what you agreed with, what you don't agree with. Hit us up. Let us know. That's going to do it. Mark, send us off, big guy.
Bye.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.